rain lashed the sable tents of the northern host, turning the meadows outside River Run to slick black mud that sucked at boots and swallowed campfires in sputtering hiss. Through the storm, torches flickered like dying stars, their light winking out whenever a gust tore canvas from its pegs. Robb Stark, king in the north, though the crown he had never asked for, still felt a stranger's weight upon his brow, stood beneath the flap of his command tent, and breathed the wild air. It smelled of wet horse, pine, and the river running swollen beyond the willow line. Yet beneath those honest scents lurked the iron tang of blood that no deluge could wash from memory. A fortnight ago on the stone field at Oxcross, he had shattered Stafford Lannister's host. But victory tasted thin when every gain in the west was balanced by news of loss in the east. The raven perched upon the map table behind him bore the latest calamity. King's Landing had repelled Stannis Baratheon. Renly was dead, and the Tyrells, once rumored to have thrown their weight behind Renly's ghost, were marching south to bend the knee to the boy King Joffrey. Lightning split the sky, painting the camp in cold white relief. And in that moment Robb saw the enormity of his task as starkly as Winterfell in midwinter Stark against the snow. He returned to the table where Maester Vyman's candles guttered low, their wax pooling like half-melted sigils over the carved weirwood surface. Catelyn had scavenged from River Run's solar to remind her son of home. Pinned beneath a dagger lay letters written in elegant, unfamiliar hands. Sir Brynden had intercepted them on the stone road crossing the neck, carried by a Tyrell courier who surrendered gladly once he learned that his missive might forestall further war. Robb traced the inked lilies that framed the salutation. To his grace Robb Stark, king in the north and of the Trident. Then let his thumb rest on the signature that shimmered like hidden steel. Olenna Redwine of House Tyrell, matriarch of Highgarden. The Queen of Thorns, men called her. A woman reputed to be sharper than any sword and thrice as unyielding. Read it aloud, great John Umber had urged when the council gathered. Brute fists clenched like hammers upon his hips, yet Robb had demurred. Some words deserved the silence of solitary decision. Others cut deeper when shared. So he had folded the parchment and set it aside, waiting for the hour when camp quieted and only the rain and gray wind kept company with kings. Now that hour had come, and Grey Wind's golden eyes watched from the shadows, patient and unblinking, as Robb unfolded destiny with careful hands. The letter spoke first of condolences, for courtesy demanded acknowledgement of the sorrows House Stark had endured. The breaking of Winterfell, the deaths of men loyal and true, the capture of Lord Eddard in King's Landing and his execution upon the steps of Baelor's Sept. But the ink did not linger on grief. It flowed swiftly to the calculus of advantage. With Renly slain and Stannis broken, the realm teetered between a golden lion and a wolf crowned in snow. House Tyrell, rich in food and men yet wary of Lannister arrogance, sought a bond that might reshape the war. They offered Margaery Tyrell, beloved sister, maiden of surpassing grace and rumored fertility, to be queen in the north beside Robb, uniting the Reach's harvest with the North's valor and the Riverland's resolve. In exchange they asked no fealty to Iron Throne, nor concession of Robb's hard-won independence, only friendship cemented in marriage, and the promise of mutual defense should either realm be threatened by dragon, kraken, or lion. There was no mention of Joffrey or Cersei, no plea for redress of Baratheon claims. Olenna wrote as one sovereign to another, a gardener seeking fertile ground in which to plant the future. By the time Robb reached the wax seal's ragged edge, his pulse hammered like a drum, and dawn's pallid light fingered the tent walls, turning rain to silver threads. When Catelyn entered, the torches had sputtered out and only the gray of early morning remained. She did not greet him as a king but as her eldest, brushing wet auburn hair from her cheeks, eyes red not from tears, but sleepless watchfulness. "You kept late, counsel," she said, though no reproach colored the words. He handed her the letter without preamble. She read, lips moving, and with each line the furrow between her brows deepened. Finally she folded the parchment the way one closes a tomb, and set it gently atop the map. "A tempting garden this," she murmured. "Yet roses bear thorns." Robb's mouth twisted in a wry echo of a smile. "And wolves bear teeth." They spoke then of politics and pride. of River Run's banners ragged after years of siege, of Karstark rage boiling still for sons lost at Whispering Wood, of Frey slights unanswered. Catelyn counseled caution. Walder Frey had promised Robb marriage to one of his granddaughters, and the old lord's vanity might calcify into vengeance should the troth be broken. But she also remembered Aerys Targaryen and the cost of spurning alliances when winter's wolves needed southern harvests. Before she finished, Robb could taste the unspoken memory of his father's frostbitten honor, and knew his mother weighed more than strategy. She weighed survival. Word spread as word always does, carried on the wings of gossip, faster than any raven. By midday Lord Edmure strode into the pavilion splattered with horse sweat, cheeks flushed with the thrill of possibility. Highgarden's coffers could field 20,000 fresh swords, he declared, laying out figures like cards at a tourney, and their granaries are deeper than the Mander. Sir Brynden, dour as Riverstone, countered with doubts. The reach borders the Lannisters to east and west. Rose petals may drift whichever way the wind favors that day. Greyjohn Umber laughed at the bickering. Roses or no, a man would sooner eat bread than leather. We starve come winter without southern wheat. The small folk cooks had begun rationing oat cakes, and even the war-hardened understood that swords alone did not feed bellies. Robb listened, saying little, weighing each phrase as though it were a piece of chainmail on his shoulders. He felt Grey Wind's presence behind him, silent, unnerving. The direwolf sensed anxiety like a stormhound scenting thunder. At last, Robb raised a hand. "My lords, whether we wed roses or rutabagas, we must first meet the gardeners." Heads nodded, and thus a decision took root. A small retinue would ride south beneath truce under a banner quartered with direwolf and lily, to treat with Lord Mace and Lady Olenna in bitter open daylight. 4 days later, the retinue left River Run, beneath a sullen sky, the color of a bruise. 30 riders, and twice that number of outriders, banners rippling damply in the wind. Robb rode at their head clad not in plate but supple riding leathers, the color of rusted iron, his direwolf stalking silent as a hunter's shadow at his flank. Grey Wind's presence was both herald and warning. Small folk on roadside farms fell to one knee as the royal company passed, half in awe, half in fear of those pale killers' eyes. The riverlands lay ravaged. Fields trampled, orchards stripped bare, and as they wound south the devastation knit itself into memory like barbs beneath the skin. Robb made note of each burned village, each flock slaughtered, and left to rot, for those wounds were debts he intended someone to pay. At night, they camped on islands of dry ground, and spoke in low voices about what might await beyond the Blackwater rush. Catelyn rode with them, as did Sir Brynden, Mage Mormont, and a scattering of young lords chosen as tokens of trust. Jojen Reed, small but quick-witted, and Sir Rollum Westerling, whose mother had sworn fealty though her liege was still uncertain. Missing from the column were the Frey men. Robb had left them to guard River Run, a delicate insult wrapped in necessity, knowing every step south strained an already fraying pack. They crossed the Red Fork at an abandoned ferry town where charred beams protruded from gray waters like skeletal fingers. As they made camp, Robb received a second raven from the Queen of Thorns. The missive contained a single line of florid script. "We prune the dead wood so new flowers may bloom." Attached was a white rose still fresh despite the journey, its petals tipped scarlet. Deliberate, unmistakable. "She means to demonstrate the Reach remembers Stark blood," Catelyn observed, turning the bloom between cautious fingers. Brynden spat into the mud. "Or she means to remind us roses grow wherever blood waters the soil." That night Robb dreamed of a garden beneath snow, where crimson blossoms opened one by one until the air smelled of summer, even as ice filled his lungs. Beyond the ruined ferry the landscape softened, gentle hills swelling toward the Reach. The soil grew richer, the air warmer, and by the 6th day they encountered the first Tyrell outriders. Knights armored in gilt steel engraved with climbing vines, plumed helms nodding in greeting across a cautious gap. Terms of the parley were exchanged on parchment and in the measured courtesy of seasoned soldiers. No man unsheathed steel, Yet the tension between banners was a drawn bowstring. Wolves and roses both possessed thorns. Sir Brynden insisted on scouting every copse and ridge. Lady Mage kept her bare banners tightly furled but fingers upon axe hafts. As the two columns merged, Robb studied the men who might soon be brothers in arms. They were taller than he expected, sun-browned and easy in the saddle, and they sang as they rode. A lilting harvest tune that seemed almost an affront against a land drowning in war. But there was strength in that song, a confidence writ not in bragging, but in the certainty that spring always followed winter. Robb wondered if such certainty could survive the snows he knew were coming from the north, snows no southern flower had ever seen. Highgarden revealed itself not as a fortress, but as a proclamation. Here was the promise of harvest made stone and blossom. The walls climbed the hillside in concentric rings draped with flowering vines, each tier set with archways arched like petals about to open. Beyond the final curtain wall, slender towers rose like spears capped with golden banners, and wherever the eye settled there burst some riot of color. Crimson ladies lace creeping over parapets, dahlias nodding beside murder holes, white doves wheeling across trellised courtyards. Robb Stark reined in atop the last ridge and felt his men fall silent behind him. Even the northern winds that had dogged them through the neck seemed to pause in reverence, allowing the scents of lavender and ripe peach to drift upward. He thought of Winterfell's godswood, humble, ancient, honest in its austerity, and felt for a moment like a stranger in a painting. The hush broke only when Sir Gareth Flowers, captain of the Reach escort, sounded a silver horn that unfurled music more delicate than any war call Robb had known. Gates swung wide. Between two hedge walls, trimmed so precisely they could have been drawn with a quill, stood the welcoming party. Lord Mace Tyrell, in gilded doublet, cheeks round as summer fruit, the indomitable Lady Olenna, cane planted like a general's standard, and, between brightness and shadow, Margaery Tyrell, hair the shade of chestnut honey, lips curved in a welcome that felt both invitation and test. Margaery had rehearsed this moment since the Raven first brought news that the king in the north would seek audience. Her brothers joked that she need only smile to snare a wolf, yet she understood courtship was warfare wielding subtler arms. As she stepped from her father's side, silk whispering around her legs, she saw at once that Robb Stark was younger than rumor, yet bore himself with a solemnity many graybeards failed to achieve. Stark grays and russets clung to his broad shoulders. Weather and worry had traced faint lines at the corners of his eyes, but the eyes themselves were startling, clear, fiercely blue, fringed by lashes dark enough to seem painted. They missed nothing, not the tremor in Lord Mace's sweaty hand, not the measuring glance Olenna cast upon the northerners' frayed cloaks, and certainly not the faintest tilt of Margaery's chin as she held his gaze. She spoke first, because silence is the soil where doubt sprouts. "Your Grace," she said, and let warmth bloom in the words like late sun upon orchard rose. "The Reach welcomes you as a friend long expected." Her voice was low, melodic but firm, practiced to carry across a throne room yet intimate enough to coax confession. Robb dismounted in a single liquid motion, and to the astonishment of several Highgarden ladies, sank to one knee upon Tyrell stone. "Then may I rise as such?" he replied, and in that instant Margaery felt the chessboard flip. This wolf had teeth indeed, but he knew when to sheathe them behind courtesy sharp as any blade. The procession wound through lavender-lined paths toward the inner keep where gardeners plucked stray leaves the moment they dared fall. And mosaic floors depicted victories so ancient their heroes' names had crumbled to myth. By the time Robb's retinue reached the great hall, servants had transformed it from audience chamber to banquet garden. Trestle tables bore towers of sugared plums, roasted grouse glazed with honeyed wine, trenchers piled high with wheaten bread still steaming. Musicians nestled amid potted lemon trees tuning harps to the key of summer. Yet no feast commenced. Instead, formal introductions unfurled like ceremonial banners. Each northern name was echoed by its Reach counterpart, grit balanced by grace, until the hall itself seemed to lean forward, anxious to know whether ice and flower might truly grow from the same root. Mace Tyrell spoke at length of mutual prosperity. Edmure extolled the valor of the Tully trout, waxing lyrical about river trade routes, reopened under shared banners. Though cordial, these overtures floated above the heart of matters like scented smoke. Robb tasted the evasions and finally lifted a hand, restoring quiet more effectively than any herald's staff. "We ride far," he said, "and we bleed still farther. Let us eat together first, for no pact endures on an empty stomach." Laughter bubbled, tension eased, and the feast began. Not yet a wedding, but the hush before vows whispered themselves into being. Later, when dusk spilled violet across the orchards and torches stippled the ramparts with fire gnats, Robb found himself guided through an arched door into a private solar draped in climbing roses so fragrant they threatened to drown every rational thought. Waiting inside, seated at a desk littered with scrolls and a half-finished goblet of arbor red, was Lady Olenna. She dismissed attendance with a flick, leaving only her ashen-haired self, Robb, and the hum of moths battering at stained-glass panes. "Sit, boy," she ordered. Though Robb had seen men thrice her size obey the same bark, he sat. She studied him as a jeweler might appraise a curious stone, turning her cane slowly between bony fingers. "My granddaughter is clever, kind to look upon, and of a disposition that endears her to small folk. She will make any realm the stronger. But I have lived through 4 kings and 3 fools, and I will not send her into danger for the sake of songs." Robb met the slash of her gaze, feeling suddenly as though he faced his own mother in sterner guise. "I seek no song, my lady, only a chance to shape a peace the realm can stomach." Olenna snorted. "Peace is a fat sow. Everyone claims they will not slaughter her. Yet the moment hunger bites they reach for the cleaver." She leaned closer. "Tell me, King of Snow, what will you do when the lion roars at your gate again, and you need roses to hold your walls? Will you sacrifice my flower so your north might see another spring?" Robb's reply came steady as hearthstone. "I will bleed before she does." Olenna's smile was razor thin. "A pretty promise. Let us hope you never taste how iron turns to rust upon the tongue." Even as Robb parried thorns with courtesy, a darker petal drifted into Highgarden. A raven, blacker than midnight in a cellar, alighted upon the rookery's stone perch bearing Frey wax. Its message, penned in cramped quivering script, reminded Robb Stark of his oath to wed one of Walder Frey's granddaughters, and coldly enumerated the affront if he did not. The words stank of affronted pride, and beneath that, a hunger every bit as sharp as northern winter. Walder demanded not merely apology but recompense. The restoration of Harrenhal once captured, a Frey seat upon the Stark Council, and gold adequate to salve insult beyond measure. Sir Brynden tossed the letter upon the hearth where it curled and blackened. Yet the smoke lingered in Robb's lungs long after. While Reach harpers sang of new alliances, Walder Frey wrote dark verses of betrayal. Robb called council past midnight. They gathered in a round turret room whose windows framed moonlit vineyards. Catelyn, Brynden, Mage Mormont, Edmure, and, by Tyrell courtesy, Sir Garland, the gallant. All wore fatigue like ill-fitting cloaks. Debate sparked, flared, smoldered. Edmure argued appeasement. A lesser Frey daughter could be wed to some northern lord, healing pride. Brynden countered that Walder's vanity was a bottomless well. "Feed it once, and you'll pour until the bucket runs dry." Maeg's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "Let the Freys choke on their bridge tolls. Wolves don't bargain with carrion crows." Catelyn said little until the room verged on rancor. Then she spoke. "Honor bought my husband's head. Let us not pay the same price for my son's crown." She reminded them that vengeance and strategy often wore the same mask, but only one plotted safe return. Robb listened, but his thoughts drifted to a quiet garden cloister where he had glimpsed Margaery earlier, laughing with her cousins as though war were a rumor invented by men who had never seen rose petals fall. He wondered if he could promise her that laughter for years, or whether he was stealing spring to warm a northern tomb. At dawn, Margaery found Catelyn upon a terrace, overlooking herb beds wet with dew. Without attendants, the Lady Stark resembled a weirwood branch carved from living grace, pale, resilient, weather-shaped by grief. Margaery approached with measured steps, stopping at a respectful distance. "May I sit?" she asked. Caitlin gestured to the stone bench beside her. Sparrows hopped among thyme blossoms, and for a time they watched the garden wake. "In the north," Caitlin said finally, "we'll greet the morning by breathing steam into the air and thanking the gods for warmth. Here you greet it with songbirds." Margaery smiled. "There is music in frost as well, my lady. One only needs patience to hear it." The response earned a flicker of approval. They spoke then, not of politics but of sisters, of mothers, and of the quiet dread that comes with hearing one's child cry in the night. Margaery spoke of Loras riding to war, of her dread at each raven-shaped shadow. Caitlin spoke of Bran dreaming of flight, and of Arya gone missing like a summer storm. In that exchange lay the foundation of trust, mortared with shared fears. When they parted, Caitlin pressed a sprig of wintermint into Margaery's palm. "For clarity," she said. The Reach Maiden closed her fingers around the sharp scent and thought. Clarity cuts as keenly as any blade. Robb's next audience with Margaery unfolded beneath the tremulous shade of pomegranate trees heavy with jeweled fruit. No retainers accompanied them, save Grey Wind who padded silent at a distance, ears twitching each time gardeners crept too near. They walked along a reflecting pool, where orange koi drifted like fallen leaves. Conversation began with trifles, the health of Highgarden's apiaries, the promise of northern lumber to rebuild storm-damaged dikes, but soon tilted toward admissions more dangerous. Robb confessed his fear of failing men who had crowned him before he grew a beard thick enough to shave each morn. Margaery spoke of being bartered from Renly to Joffrey like a prized mare, and how each betrothal forced her to master a new role. "I have been a princess sworn to a rainbow king and a queen promised to a golden tyrant," she said, voice soft but unflinching. "I would rather be a partner to a man who sees me." Robb stopped at the pool's edge. The water mirrored her face in his, petals floating between like scattered promises. "I see you," he said. And though no vows were spoken, the air thickened as though the old gods and the new alike leaned closer, eager to catch the first word of a prophecy still being written. The fragile peace was rattled 3 days later, when 2 Frey emissaries arrived, bedraggled and sour from hard riding. Sir Ryman Frey and Black Walder Rivers. They were shown minimal courtesy, quartered in a tower far from the Tyrell solar. Yet their mere presence cast a pall. Ryman carried a ledger tooled with silver coins. He spoke of debts, dowries, indemnities. Black Walder carried a dirk and spoke little, letting his smirk do the talking. During the first parley in the orchard court, Ryman announced, "My Lord Grandfather expects recompense equal to the insult offered." His eyes crawled toward Margaery, assessing her as though she were a line item on a tally. The Reach Lords bristled. Sir Loras nearly drew steel, restrained only by Garland's steady hand. Robb's temper flared ice-white. Grey Wind growled, hackles rising. House Frey would do well to recall whose colors sheltered theirs at Whispering Wood, Robb said, voice quiet enough to chill the summer air. Ryman paled, but Black Walder's smile widened until Sir Brynden stepped forward and rested his hand upon a sword hilt. "Smiles are fleeting things, bastard. Best keep yours before the wind steals it." The phrase withdrew, but the court now understood how narrow the bridge to union truly was. Highgarden sought to drown discord in spectacle. A tourney of courtesy was proclaimed, no sharpened lances, only blunted tourney tips, followed by an evening of masked dancing. The lists were erected upon a meadow carpeted with marigolds. Viewing stands wove garlands through carved rails. Robb did not intend to joust, mindful of the arrow wound that still stiffened his right shoulder. Yet when Sir Loras approached with a spare set of armor chased in silver leaves, the young king hesitated. "Let the realm see its wolf ride beneath southern sun," Loras urged. "We will show them this friendship draws strength, not weakness." Encouraged, Robb accepted. Word spread, and small folk flocked from miles in hopes of seeing the famed young wolf tilt against the Knight of Flowers. On the day of the tourney, Margaery watched from a balcony draped in teal silks. Trumpets sounded, hooves thundered, and for 3 passes Robb and Loras traded blows so evenly that the crowd's breath seemed a single held note. At the 4th, they shattered lances in the center, splinters spinning like new constellations. Both men reeled but kept saddles, and laughter erupted, disarming rivalry. Later, as healers wrapped bruised ribs, Loras grinned. Now the bards have material enough. May they sing of roses and wolves in harmony. Robb's answering smile, though crooked with pain, gleamed true. That night, while musicians tuned for the mask, Robb retreated to a secluded balcony overlooking candlelit vineyards. Below, lanterns swayed, each flame a floating wish. He should have felt triumph. An alliance blooming, camaraderie forged. But inside churned a storm of memory. Jane Westerling's face rose unbidden, the healer's daughter whose gentle hands had stitched flesh, and for one grief-clouded night, soothed a king's heart. He had not spoken to her since leaving Riverrun. She was safe, her honor guarded. Sybil Westerling sworn to silence. Yet promises, even unspoken ones, can bleed. Robb pressed a fist to the stone railing and closed his eyes. He could wed Margaery and bind his realm to plenty. He could remember Jane as a whisper of mercy in a time of slaughter. Choices carve men more deeply than steel. Footsteps approached. Catelyn emerged, face lit from within my lantern glow. She saw the turmoil. The gods weave strange threads, she said. Yet they gave us minds to knot them into purpose. What do you desire, Robb? He stared across vineyards where workers harvested under moonlight, each bundle tied with twine. I desire an end, he said. To war, to famine, to fear. And I fear the price of that desire may scar more than swords ever could? Catelyn touched his arm. Then choose the scar you can bear to carry. Sybil Westerling arrived at Highgarden unannounced 2 days later, flanked by retainers wearing Lady Westerling's colors, but keeping hands conspicuously close to sword hilts. Rumor preceded her, that she carried letters from Casterly Rock, promising elevation should she deliver the young wolf's heart to Lord Tywin, metaphorically or otherwise. She requested audience. Olenna granted it, out of either curiosity or contempt. The meeting was held in a shaded pergola, where honeysuckle coiled around marble columns. Sybil produced a small casket. Inside lay a silk ribbon the color of winter sky. Your Majesty left this at my daughter's bedside, she told Robb, voice poised at the line between entreaty and accusation. Olenna's eyes narrowed. Spare us quilting, dear. What is it you wish? Sybil's reply was smooth. Acknowledgement of the prior understanding, a token estate for her daughter. Perhaps the honor of sitting at the new queen's side. If there was to be a new queen. Robb felt the trap. Any concession now tethered him to two futures incompatible. Before he could answer, Margaery stepped forward. Lady Westerling, she said. I have long admired the embroidery of crag needlework. Should the king and I unite, we will require garments worthy of two realms. Your daughter would find welcome service and safety within our household. It was a balm and a dismissal intertwined. Sybil's mouth tightened, but she bowed. The casket closed with a click that sounded oddly like surrender. Tywin Lannister, meanwhile, received his own ravens. Scouts reported northern banners embedded like burrs in the rich flank of the Reach. He read between inked lines, the wolf and the rose courting. The prospect displeased him more than any defeat upon field. In his solar at Harrenhal, he moved carved tokens across a map, pushing a lion host toward the Riverlands, even as ravens winged orders to wrench ships from the Redwine fleet and choke the Mander's mouth. If wheat would not feed his armies, he would have the Tyrell harvest rot in granaries. Yet such machinations stirred only at the periphery of the blooming alliance. For now, Highgarden's halls rang with laughter and music. With every shared meal, northern men learned the Reach songs, and Reach squires attempted the austere bow stances of Winterfell archers. Robb trained with Garland in the mornings, exchanging sword forms beneath olive branches. Sweat erased heraldry, leaving only two warriors refining craft. At dusk, Margaery strolled library corridors with Oliver Frey, a hostage-turned-page, reading aloud tales of Nymeria's voyage, while servants lit candles, one by one, until the words glowed on parchment. Threads braided themselves. Yet each bond drew its shadow. Walder Frey's silence thickened. Casterly Rock's forges rang through nights, and somewhere beyond the wall, an ancient cold gathered strength, as though sensing warmth that must inevitably be quenched. The formal betrothal was announced on the first day of the Festival of the Maiden, when Highgarden's courtyards filled with girls in white, releasing cages of painted butterflies. Before a crowd of lords and small folk, Robb knelt upon a dais carpeted with fresh-cut heather, and offered Margaery a ring wrought from castle-forged ice, and reached gold twisted together. The symbolism did not escape anyone. Disparate metals melted into unity. Margaery accepted, slipping the ring past her own knuckle with steady hand. Cheers erupted. Petals rained from balconies, and gray wind howled, a sound not of menace but of primal acknowledgement. Bells rang through the castle, their peals carrying into the countryside, where farmers paused in their harvest and looked northward, wondering what shape the realm might now take. That evening's feast dwarfed the welcoming banquet. Tables groaned under whole boar stuffed with pears, trout drizzled in fiery Dornish peppers, and wheels of blue cheese the size of shields. Bards competed for favor, weaving new ballads. The Wolf and the Rose, Petals upon the Snow, and Harvest of the North. Robb and Margaery sat side by side upon a raised dais carved to resemble entwined weirwood roots and rose stems. Between toasts, their shoulders brushed, incidental yet electric. Olenna presided over seating like a chess master, ensuring no Frey or Westerling piece sat where mischief might flourish. Loras toasted his sister with wine poured into a chalice shaped like two roses whose stems wrapped each other. "To love that grows even in winter," he said. The hall roared approval. Yet when Robb lifted the cup to drink, he caught Catelyn's cautious eye. She nodded once, a reminder that celebrations were the most potent masks for blades. Near midnight, long after the last course, a delicate pastry shaped like a direwolf chasing a stag. Robb excused himself for air. Margaery followed without prompting. They found themselves atop a parapet where vines climbed ancient stone, and the moon hung low, a silver scythe. Below, minstrels' strains drifted like far-off surf. Robb rested forearms upon the ledge. "We have crossed the threshold," he said. "Now comes the storm." Margaery joined him, shoulders almost but not quite touching. Storms pass. Gardens remain if tended. He turned to her fully. Torches from below flickered in her eyes. "Will you find the north too cold?" "I will find it alive," she replied. "And I will learn its songs." Robb exhaled, a sound part sigh, part prayer. A warm wind rustled the vines. He offered his hand. Margaery placed hers within, soft yet resolute. They stayed that way until distant revelry faded, and new music rose. An ancient tune played by unseen crickets, by the hush of ripe wheat bending to night. In that moment, they were simply man and woman, standing upon the edge of something vast and perilous and perhaps beautiful. Before parting, Margaery drew from her sleeve a folded scrap of parchment. "For you," she said. Later, in his chamber, Robb unfolded it. On it was sketched a rose and a wolf intertwined, roots knotted into a single heart. Beneath, in ink barely darker than the paper, a line of verse. "Where winter's howl meets summer's sigh, new seasons dare to bloom." Robb traced the words until the candles guttered out. He set the parchment beside his sword and lay awake, listening to the unfamiliar hum of Highgarden's night insects, thinking that perhaps, just perhaps, the realm had space for new seasons yet. Outside the windows of the keep, dawn stirred. Along the Mander, barges piled with grain set sail for northern markets, their captains bearing stamped charters signed by two sovereigns. In Riverrun, ravens prepared to wing south bearing Karstark oaths of loyalty to Robb's intended bride. And in a freezing keep called the Dreadfort, a man named Ramsay sharpened knives, smiling at rumors of alliances he intended to rend. But that lay ahead in coils of time. For now, Highgarden thrummed with the unsteady joy of hope. Robb Stark rose from his bed, belted on his sword, and stepped into the corridor guided by the fragile certainty that some wounds might yet be healed in fields of flowers. Gray wind greeted him, muzzle flecked with morning dew, amber eyes bright. The direwolf's presence steadied Robb as he strode toward the audience hall, where wedding contracts would be drafted. Behind him, servants stripped feast tables, sweeping petals into baskets. Ahead, scribes sharpened quills. In the liminal hush between, the young king felt the full weight of his choice settle, not a yoke, but a mantle woven of thorn and snow. He did not know whether the threads would hold against storm and steel. He only knew they must, because the hourglass of fate had turned, and every grain henceforth would fall upon the union forming this day. Somewhere in the castle's heart, Margaery laughed, clear, confident. Robb quickened his stride toward that sound, toward the promise it held, unafraid of Rose's thorns or wolf's teeth, for together they had the shape of something stronger than either alone. A new heraldry the realm had yet to name. Ka. Quills scratched like crickets in the hush of Highgarden's solar, their chorus weaving threads of ink across parchment, as dawn's first light bled honey over the mullioned windows. Robb stood at the head of the long table, shoulders squared in a doublet of muted gray, trimmed with the smallest hint of green. No gaudy proclamation, merely an echo of the alliance taking form. Beside him, Lady Olenna sipped arbor gold, as if sealing empires with every measured swallow. Margaery sat opposite, her gaze lowered yet alert, fingers folded over each other like petals bracing for the cool of morning. Between them lay the wedding contract, its clauses unfurling in delicate hand as precise as any battle map. Dowers of grain and silver, reciprocal defense pacts, guarantees of safe passage through the neck for Reach caravans, hunting rights granted to northern trappers in the Reach deepest woods, and a clause so small yet so vital, a single line promising that, should the union fail to bear fruit within 7 years, neither house would claim default. Lord Mace busied himself extolling each concession, as though he had conjured them wholly from his own magnanimity. But every figure, every subtle tilt of advantage, bore the thumbprint of the Queen of Thorn. Robb caught her eye. She answered with a twitch of her lips that might have been approval, or the beginning of a smile. Either way, he understood the message. This is the shape of our garden. Do not trample the seedlings. When the final parchment was sanded and sealed, Margaery rose. Her movement drew every eye, yet she spoke not of politics but of the feast to celebrate the accord. Tonight, she said, we will dine beneath the open sky, so the stars themselves may witness what we begin. She turned to Robb. Do northerners dance beneath constellations, your grace? We dance, he answered, though perhaps not with the grace of your southern stars. But we know the music of wolves howling at the first snowfall, and I will share that tune with you if you dare. I dare many things, she replied, and the scent of crushed roses filled the air like a vow. Robb stepped from the solar into corridors alive with purposeful motion. Seamstresses scuttled past bearing bolts of pale wool hauled up from Old Town just that dawn. Tyrell stewards arranged quarters for Karstark envoys expected within the week, and somewhere underfoot Sweet Robin, a gray tabby kitten gifted by Garland to amuse the northern maids, chased phantom mice over tiles depicting fruits he would never taste. Despite the bustle, Robb felt a hush within him, as if Highgarden itself inhaled, waiting to discover whether the wolf would truly make lair among roses. Sir Garland intercepted him outside the training yard. A quick bout before breakfast cools your blood? He asked, eyes bright with the simple delight of swordplay. Robb considered the stack of correspondence awaiting his seal. Reports from Galbart Glover on the Ironborn movements near Moat Cailin. Another from the watchman at the Twins noting increased tolls on the Green Fork. But the promise of steel clearing the mind lured him. He nodded. In the yard, violet shadows clung to the inner walls. They fought with blunted tourney blades, yet each strike rang like prophecy. Garland fought in fluid arcs, legs planted like orchard trees, while Robb favored the short, brutal cuts taught by Winterfell's master-at-arms. Sweat soon darkened Garland's tunic, but his grin never wavered. I've noticed, he puffed between parries. You favor the shield side when you press. Robb laughed breathlessly. A maester once told me I'll grow out of the habit. He pivoted, pivot again, then feinted high. Garland's counter came a hair late. Robb tapped his ribs. They reset. On the final exchange, Garland slid the flat of his blade down Robb's and shoved, twisting at the last instant to hook Robb's knee. Robb tumbled backwards, deliberately, rolling to his feet before the point kissed his throat. Garland bowed. The North yields? The North adapts, Robb answered and offered his arm. They clasped forearms, no victor named, but respect earned. Their laughter drifted to Margaery on a terrace above. She watched unseen through a balustrade of curling ivy. The thunder of their contest quickened her pulse, as surely as court intrigue sharpened her mind. She noted Robb's tendency to protect his right shoulder even-heeled, the way his brow furrowed when he gauged distance, and how he never fought to humiliate, only to test and learn. Beneath the vines, she rehearsed the North's formal greeting. Shoulders back, chin level, eyes direct, preparing for a moment when she would stand on Winterfell's battlements and call its bannermen her own. Catelyn Stark, meanwhile, paced a garden path lined with ladies' mantle dew-pearled, like a silent rosary. She turned each worry over and over. Walder Frey's injured pride, Bolton murmurs from the Dreadfort, whispers that Stannis, though broken, licked wounds on Dragonstone and might rise anew driven by fire-born visions. She paused before a fountain shaped as twin trout leaping, a Tully emblem. The water's crystalline fall soothed her for a heartbeat. She remembered River Run in summer when Ned had stood precisely where Robb now stood, between duty and desire, between war and a peace requiring compromise. Ned had chosen honor and lost his head. Would Robb choose alliance and risk losing his heart? She pressed fingers to temples. The dew clung cool to her gown. The sun climbed relentless. Catelyn did not see Sybil Westerling approach until the crag lady's reflection shimmered upon the fountain's surface. "My lady." Sybil began, voice silky. "I come to extend gratitude for the kindness shown my daughter. She has been offered a position among Lady Margaery's maidens. We are relieved." Catelyn met the woman's eyes. Relief often carries the weight of obligation. Sybil dipped her chin. "Obligations can forge chains, or bridges. I would prefer bridges." She produced a small leather pouch and pressed it into Catelyn's palm. "A token for the future queen. Iron from the crag's deepest veins, smelted with star metal fallen long before our grandfathers were born. Let it be reforged into something that protects, not divides." She curtsied and withdrew, leaving Catelyn to unwrap the pouch. Inside lay a nugget of metal black, as night yet shimmering blue at the edges. Strange ore, rare and potent. Catelyn closed her fist around it. "Bridges," she thought, "but only if the river beneath does not flood." In the shade of a pear arbor, black Walder Rivers leaned against a trunk, biting into fruit not quite ripe. His lips curled at the sourness. Still, he chewed, eyes tracking Tyrell guards bustling in the distance. Ryman Frey fretted nearby, parchment in hand, parchment dribbling with fresh ink to enumerate their grievances. Black Walder spat a seed. "All the ink in the Reach won't turn roses to stone walls. They'll bleed like anyone else." Ryman hushed him, but Black Walder only laughed. "Relax, cousin. If the old goat wants retribution, we'll learn soon enough whether these gardens hide thorns sharp enough to prick." And now, a shadow fell over them. Garland Tyrell, freshly bathed, hair still damp. "Some thorns," he said mildly, "draw blood before you know you're scratched." Black Walder's grin widened, but Garland's expression carried no humor. "The lady of the house invites you to this evening's feast." "She expects courtesy." "Courtesy," Black Walder echoed. "We'll bring the finest we can scrape up." His eyes flicked toward Garland's sword. "Tell me, sir, does that blade sing as pretty as your brother's lance?" Ben shot. "It sings when it must," Garland said, then turned on his heel. Black Walder watched him go, biting another mouthful of pear, until juice dribbled down his jaw like acid. Before the feast, Robb found Margaery in the Sept of the Vine, a domed sanctuary carved from pale stone veined greenish gold. Stained glass spilled shifting mosaics across the floor. Saints holding sheaves of wheat, maidens plucking roses, warriors lifting both sword and pruning hook. At the altar Margaery knelt, hands clasped. Robb paused, hesitant to disturb, yet she sensed him and looked back, offering a smile meant only for him. He joined her. Neither spoke for a while. The hush was a third presence. Candles fluttered, their scent of lavender and myrrh mixing with the cool stone air. Finally, Margaery whispered, "I feared I would kneel here as Joffrey's bride. The gods have a peculiar humor." Her voice quavered. "I prayed for strength then. Now I pray for wisdom." Robb laid his hand over hers atop the carved altar rail. "Wisdom, strength, and something more. Patience, perhaps. The North tests all who call it home. Bendsauen." She twined her fingers through his. "Then teach me its tests. I will learn." Robb turned to face the window depicting the seven-pointed star blooming from snow. "In the North we say, winter is coming. But sometimes I wonder if winter is simply the moment one truth swallows all others. I thought vengeance enough. Yet here we kneel." "Vengeance tastes like ashes," she said softly. "Hope tastes like risk." He exhaled raggedly. "And risk tastes like fear." Her grip tightened. "We will season it with trust." She rose, smoothing her gown, and together they stepped back into sunlight, into the clamor of preparations where risk and hope mingled inseparably. The feast unfolded beneath canopies of woven willow branches, strung with crystalline lanterns. Twilight bled to indigo overhead, and the first stars pricked the sky like cold embers. Tables arranged in a great circle framed a dance floor of polished oak panels, laid directly upon turf, so guests' feet would feel the heartbeat of Highgarden soil. Harpers perched on a dais crafted from living vines played melodies lighter than dragonfly wings, while summer wine flowed from amphorae cooled in Mander water until condensation beaded their flanks. Robb and Margaery entered hand in hand. A hush swept the gathering, then applause rolled forth like surf upon a reef. Robb felt it reverberate in his chest, but kept his expression calm. Margaery curtsied to every third table, her smile luminous enough to draw even Black Walder's grudging acknowledgement. Olenna motioned them to the high table, but Robb shook his head. "I would walk first among my people," he said, and guided Margaery along the outer circle, greeting bannermen and small folk with equal courtesy. This, he understood, was sovereignty. Not the entitlement to be served, but the privilege to be embraced, and to answer that embrace in kind. After toasts, the music shifted to a faster reel. Margaery lifted her skirts. "Show me the wolf's dance," she challenged. Robb laughed, reddening slightly, but obliged. He took her waist, stepped with surprising lightness for a man his size, leading her through a whirling pattern, older than any sept. 2 steps forward, spin, a clap above shoulders, then repeat, feet drumming earth like the first hammerfall of winter on a frozen pond. Margaery followed, tracing the rhythm quickly, laughter rising in silver peals that melted wary northern faces. Within minutes, half the reach and northern tables spilled onto the floor. Even Great John Umber lumbered through the steps, stamping so hard the lanterns trembled. The ground drank it all, a new beat layered over ages. On the feast's fringe, Ryman Frey watched, wine sour in his mouth. "This is folly," he muttered, but his eyes tracked a Karstark daughter twirling, auburn hair flying. He swallowed hard. Black Walder merely cracked his knuckles, gaze flicking across vantage points. Archways, trellises, balconies. When Loras glided past in dance, he smirked. "Pretty boy," he called, low yet cutting. Garland mid-step, swung Loras away before his brother could answer. Fireflies rose with the moon. Dancers slowed, tables refilled. A troop of Braavosi fire-eaters emerged, their torches painting arcs of liquid flame. As sparks showered, Robb felt eyes on him. Not the crowd's, but a singular gaze. He turned. At the meadow's edge, shrouded in a cloak of midnight blue, stood Roose Bolton's bastard, the man now styling himself Lord of the Dreadfort. Ramsay's grin cleaved his face, teeth glinting as white as frost on a tombstone. He raised a gloved hand in mocking salute. Robb stiffened. Meg Mormont followed his stare and growled under her breath. Ramsay faded back into darkness. leaving only the echo of mirthless laughter. Robb's mood curdled. He excused himself and strode to a staging tent where scouts reported. Sir Bartimus, one-eyed and hawk-nosed, awaited. "Your Grace, a Bolton host of 300 nears Bitterbridge," he said. "They claim escort duties, but their vanguard carries flayed man banners." Robb's jaw clenched. Bolton owes fealty yet parades flaying. Bartimus offered a letter bearing Rose's seal. Its contents were slippery, promising loyalty while bemoaning lack of instruction. Robb read it twice. "Have they quartered here?" "In a copse south of the Mander, refusing Tyrell lodgings." Robb sensed the test. Bolton measuring distance to defiance. He dismissed Bartimus with orders that no Bolton unit step within bowshot of Highgarden's walls until Robb himself parleyed. Alone. He rubbed his temple. Too many fronts. Frey offense, Bolton arrogance, Lannister threat. Hope tastes like risk indeed. When he returned, Margaery sat with Catelyn and Olenna beneath a fig tree, strung with wind chimes. Catelyn's look asked the question. Robb shook his head slightly, wordless later. Olenna's eyes sharpened. She tapped her cane. "In all gardens lurk beetles," she murmured. "Some devour roots unseen. We'll set traps." Margaery rose and took Robb aside beneath a lattice heavy with jasmine. "Something stalks your mind," she said. "Bolton," he explained quickly. She listened, then placed her palm over his heart. "Even roses have to be pruned hard to bloom again. Do what must be done. I will stand with you." He pressed his forehead to hers, drawing breath scented of jasmine and wine, and felt steadiness return. At dawn, Robb rode south with a detachment of 60. Mage Mormont, Brynden, 6 Karstark outriders, 30 Tyrell men-at-arms, and 20 of his own Riverland spearmen. Grey wind loped ahead, an ashen ghost. Mist clung low over barley fields where peasants saluted with weary awe. By midday the company reached the Bolton camp, pale tents arranged with crisp precision. Campfires low, watch rotated hourly despite daylight. Ramsay awaited, seated on a portable chair of black oak draped with lambskin. He held a peeled apple, carving slices with a wicked curved knife. "My king," Ramsay drawled as Robb dismounted. "I come at father's bidding to guard your flanks should Lannister seed drift this far." Robb noted the knife's polished bone handle engraved with tiny screaming faces. "I honor Lord Bolton's diligence. Yet courtesy demands he announces arrival sooner, else misunderstandings breed." Ramsay popped apple flesh into his mouth, chewing slowly. "Misunderstandings." His eyes pale as a winter dawn. Slithered to gray wind. "Ah, like a wolf misjudging a hare's hole. Finds itself stuck." Brynden stepped forward. "Watch your tongue, bastard." Ramsay licked juice from the blade, unblinking. "I speak only of animals, sir. No insult meant." He stood, spreading arms. "I pledge steel to protect this blossoming love match. Flayed men will guard the roses, keep the worms out." Robb felt cold coil around his spine. "No man in my alliance bears a sigil of flaying. If you ride under my banner, you cover that." Ramsay's grin thinned. "Flayed banners strike fear. Then strike them from your poles," Robb said. "An alliance built on fear alone rots." An icy beat stretched. Meg's hand tightened on her war axe. Behind Ramsay, Bolton men shifted grips. Finally, Ramsay nodded. "Very well. I will wrap them in linen, white as snow." His smile returned. "You'll find I am adaptable." Robb inclined his head. "We march tomorrow for Bitterbridge. You'll fall in line behind Tyrell outriders." Dismissed. Ramsay bowed, knife still in hand. "Ace my king commands." His eyes gleamed. Robb turned away, leaving Brynden and half the guard to watch their withdrawal. Grey wind snarled once. Ramsay's horse danced, jittery. For the briefest instant, Robb glimpsed something beneath Ramsay's composure. An ember of fury hungry for air. Highgarden hummed with bridal preparations. In courtyards, lacemakers twisted threads of spider silk fine. In kitchens marmalade simmered from oranges shipped at ruinous speed from Sunspear. In the rookery ravens flew to White Harbor, to Bear Island, to Betrothal bearing invitations penned in Tyrell green ink. Yet precisely because the castle buzzed with promise, Margaery found herself pursued by moments of sudden hush, as if the gods paused, breath held. She stood one evening in her bedchamber before a mirror framed by pearl and gilded acanthus. Her maids measured her waist, muttering numbers, but her mind floated to the north, picturing gusts of snow swirling round Winterfell's towers. Could she stand that cold? Could she warm it? She touched the parchment drawing she'd given Robb, the wolf and the rose, now framed upon a side table. She imagined bundling that parchment in furs, carrying it through gates of black iron. She imagined standing beside Robb before a heart tree whose leaves never fell. She felt fear, yes, but also a fierce curiosity that beat with every thrum of her blood. She dismissed the maids early, donning a cloak to wander the thorn maze, lit only by moonlight. Pathways twisted, looped, dead-ended. Somewhere, an owl hooted. She heard footfalls echo her own. She slowed. They slowed. She paused before a marble satyr fountain, water trickling silver. "Who walks?" she called. Oliver Frey stepped into moonbeams, hands raised. "Forgive me, my lady. I often walk here to think." Margaery studied him. His youth had not hardened to Frey's cynicism yet. "What do you ponder, Oliver? Whether a Frey may stand loyal to a wolf when bridges burn behind him?" She considered. "Loyalty is never hostage to birth. It is a choice renewed every day." Oliver exhaled, shoulders lifting. "Then I choose, my lady. If war reignites, I would stand with you. Some of my kin will not." She nodded, turning that over like a gemstone catching new facets. "The choice may one day require you to speak hard truths. I will speak them." His voice steadied. "Even if it means standing against my own. Then you shall have a place among my guard when I travel north," she promised. Oliver bowed deeply, emotion shimmering raw wall. As he departed, she thought, one seed saved from tainted ground may yet bear unspoiled fruit. The next morning, Robb convened a war council in the shade of Highgarden's oldest magnolia, its branches outstretched like a mother's arms. Attending, Edmure Brynden, freshly returned. Maeg, Garland, Loras, Mace, and, by invitation, Lady Olenna. Scrolls spread across a trestle table. Carved figures marked hosts. Lions in crimson, krakens in black, sunspear spears, and tiny wooden snowflakes representing Skagosi raiders newly reported along the northern coast. Brynden spoke first, summarizing Bolton compliance. Banners swathed, though many knives glinted. Maeg relayed word that Ironborn harried Flint's finger once more. Edmure described Lannister movements consolidating at Harrenhal. Robb listened, weighing. Olenna tapped her cane. 3 foes, 1 betrothal banquet. We cannot host war on every doorstep. Garland leaned forward. If Ironborn cut northern trade, winter's grip will tighten earlier. Robb traced the Mander's winding line with his thumb. Here is our advantage. The Reach's harvest wagons move already. We will send caravans north under joint escort. Bolton and Tyrell. And along each stop we distribute grain, not hoard it. Starving men lean to whichever master feeds them. Olenna's eyes gleamed. Feed the north before the lions cut the spine. Clever. But we'll need ships, Loras argued. Roads alone won't shift enough weight before snow. White Harbor's fleet, Robb answered. They sail south to pick grain at Maidenpool, uncontested port, and back by sea lanes, Tywin's triremes seldom patrol. He looked to Garland. Your father's captains know these waters. Garland nodded. Robb continued. Let them shepherd Mander barges to Maidenpool, then White Harbor galleys take cargo north. Mace puffed chests. Our bannermen will oblige, though many are tied to the harvest still. Olenna interjected. They will sail, dear. The roses will bloom in snow or be uprooted completely. Mace deflated, but assented. Brynden pointed to Harrenhal. Tywin may strike inland when he learns caravans ride. We should lay false trails, perhaps send decoy wagons along the Gold Road. Robb met his uncle's eyes with grim approval. Do it. And for each decoy we plant whispers that the grain is bound for Storm's End to succor Stannis. Tywin's spies will lap it up. Olenna chuckled. An old trick, feed a lion raw rumors and watch him choke. Plans unfurled like siege ladders. At meeting's end Margaery appeared carrying baskets of early pears. She offered each lord a piece. Even Mage accepted, though she eyed the fruit as though it might bite back. Robb bit into a pear, juice streaming, and felt for a heartbeat childlike joy. The simplest sweetness breaking through war's iron taste. Weeks passed. Caravans assembled. Wagons lined Highgarden's lower bailey, each loaded with burlap sacks stamped direwolf and rose. Bolton contingents arrived under Ramsay's eye. Robb rode the rows daily, greeting drivers, inspecting harness, ensuring even the littlest detail echoed unity. Rumors spread that Tywin offered a bounty for any sack captured. This only sharpened the driver's resolve. One evening, as Robb helped a stable hand adjust a mule's worn strap, he noted a figure lingering near the far stalls, a pale boy with sallow eyes, floppy hair. The lad flinched when Robb approached. "What's your name?" "Donal Mord," he stammered. "New?" Yes. Came with the last Bolton wagon." Robb's gaze dropped to the boy's hands, calloused strangely for stable work, scars across knuckles. Soldier's hands. He gently lifted Donal's left wrist. Faded rope burns. The boy jerked. Brynden appeared, silent as twilight. Robb murmured, "Keep watch on him, gently. I smell more than horse here." Brynden nodded, and Donal, already shrinking, slipped further into shadow. Night before departure, Highgarden hosted one final revel. Not triumph, but camaraderie. The kind soldiers cherish hours before risk. Cooks roasted 100 quail stuffed with berries. Tyrell vintners uncorked dusty bottles reserved for weddings. Minstrels sang a new ballad of the grain fleet. Bread for winter's children. Its chorus simple enough for clumsy foot soldiers to bellow. Mid-song, commotion broke at the outer gate. A rider arrived from Tumbleton, purple with haste. Robb met him in the courtyard. "Your Grace," the messenger gasped. "Ironborn raiders at Faircastle, striking deep. Lord Banefort begs aid. Reports say they sail under a banner depicting a red octopus. Victorian Greyjoy." Robb's pulse hammered. The Ironborn were meant to squander strength along Moat Cailin, yet here they struck the Westerlands. Caitlin joined him, brow furrowed. "If Victorian splits Tywin's attention," she whispered, "that may buy our caravans daylight." Robb nodded, though dread flickered, war sprawling like vines. He dismissed the rider to healers, then returned to the feast, but the mood had already shifted. Laughter brittle, songs dimmer. Margaery appeared at his elbow. "Bad tidings?" "Ironborn striking Tywin's coast," he said quietly. Her brows arched. "A gift from the drowned god? Or a storm we can harness?" He touched her cheek. "But every storm risks capsizing those beneath it." She held his gaze. "We learn to navigate." At dawn, under skies streaked coral, the first grain caravan rolled out. Robb and Margaery stood upon the east wall battlements as wagons creaked through the Lion Gate. Below, Ramsay rode at the head of Bolton vanguard, his banner draped in white linen as promised, though hints of flayed red bled through where cloth rubbed raw. Tyrell outriders flanked, Garland commanding. Horns called farewell. Margaery's hand slipped into Robb's. They watched until dust swallowed banners. Then Robb exhaled. "May the gods keep them, and may men keep the gods." She replied softly. They stepped back from the parapet, straight into Olenna's path. She fixed them with hawkward eyes. "A word," she barked, and led them into a small chamber where windows framed a tangle of climbing orchids. She shut the door. "You send Bolton and Tyrell together, neat knot. But knots unravel if strands rot. Ramsay Bolton is rot." She produced a sealed parchment. Reports from the Dreadfort. Flames continue. Disappearances. Whispers that ruse grows distant. Robb accepted the letter, jaw tight. We will watch him. Watch a serpent and it still strikes. She muttered. Cut off its head, it rise. I prefer cages personally. Her gaze softened. Fractionally. Toward Margaery. Guard your hearts. A wedding is no shield. Days later, ravens brought first news. The caravans passed Bitterbridge unmolested, then Silverhill, then Greenford, where hungry Riverlanders cheered at sacks distributed freely. Ramsay's force maintained discipline under Garland's eye. Robb permitted himself a rare smile as he read Sir Garland's note. Wolves and roses travel well together. No scent of lions yet, only boars rooting rumors. Highgarden's atmosphere brightened. The Tyrells redoubled efforts. Winterfell's future solar design sketched by Master Mason. Herbologists drafted lists of hardy reach seeds to plant in northern greenhouses, and seamstresses finished a bridal cloak of pale sable lined with gold silk. But a shadow advanced. Lord Randall Tarly arrived unexpectedly at dawn, helm tucked under one arm. He requested private counsel with Robb and Margaery. In the keep's war room, Tarly spoke blunt words. A raven from Old Town, Lannister galleys sighted near Sunhouse, likely bound to cut your grain lane. He placed a rolled chart on the table, stabbing a gloved finger where the Mander met the sea. If they seize this mouth, your barges cannot sail. We must act. Robb leaned over the chart. How many ships? Tarly's mouth twitched. Enough to challenge ours. Redwine fleet is stretched. A third escorting caravans, a third guarding arbor trade. His eyes locked on Robb. We need swords on shore. Robb straightened. I lead an infantry column tomorrow. Margaery's breath caught. She stepped in. We cannot risk the king's life days before our wedding. Robb shook his head. If I hide behind walls while others bleed, what king am I? Tarly's approval was a granite nod. We march at dawn then. 2,000 reach spears, 500 Northmen. He flicked parchment dust from his gauntlet. Lions will learn roses can draw blood. After Tarly left, Margaery faced Robb. Eyes storm dark. Every step you take, I see the thread tug between kingdoms. Step carefully. He cupped her face. I will return. We have vows yet to speak. Oh. She held his wrists. And if war steals your voice, then remember this. He kissed her gently, softly, until time thinned. My vow lives in more than words. That night, he lay awake listening to crickets. Gray wind paced the chamber, uneasy. Robb rose, boots silent, and opened the balcony doors. The sky clouded, stars smothered. He heard faint thunder. No storm on the horizon, but the murmur of men arming. Tomorrow he rode south to weather he did not know, riding with allies he did not entirely trust. He thought of his father marching into war believing in honor. Honor had yielded blood. Robb whispered into the night, Teach me to temper steel with mercy, gods of men and trees. Gray wind wafted low. Somewhere far off a wolf howled, not northern but a hill wolf of the Red Mountains. Robb's heart answered, a quiet drum. Before dawn the column assembled, Tyrell bright-feathered pennants snapping, northern banners stark as stone. Tarly's grim death-head sigils. Margaery came to the gate clad in riding leathers, the color of dawn mist, hair braided back. She urged Robb to take her favor, a ribbon dyed with indigo deeper than northern sky. He tied it around his sword grip. Olenna handed him a pouch. Licorice root, she said. Aids focus. Also useful to chew when bored listening to pompous speeches. He smiled. With a trumpet flourish, they set off. Hoofbeats thudding like distant drums. The road descended toward the Mander Delta, where low marshy ground steamed under morning sun. Tyrell outriders ranged ahead. Robb rode beside Tarly, eyes scanning every tree line. Hours passed. Sun climbed. Cicadas buzzed. Just past midday the scouts returned. Lannister forces had taken the small fishing port at Stonehelm Point. 2 trebuchets battered the lone watchtower. Refugees fled inland. Robb's pulse steadied the strange calm he'd known at Oxcross. He conferred with Tarly swiftly. Split the army. Send pikes through boggy alder flats where cavalry faltered. Lure Lannisters to overextend. Tarly signaled, and horns called formation. Northern spears under Lord Serwyn angled east. Tyrell longbowmen took an oak ridge overlooking the shallows. Robb led the center. Bear riders from Mormont, Silver Trout of Tully heavy infantry, and a score of Northmen wielding great axes. Smoke rose beyond reed beds. Cries drifted on wind. Lannister pillagers torching fishing shacks. Robb lifted his sword, indigo ribbon streaming. Advance! He spurred Talon. The black courser gifted by mace, and the columns surged. The earth shook. Not summer's gentle tremor, but war's merciless stomp. They broke from the reeds onto a tidal flat crunching with oyster shells. Lannister ranks scrambled to reform. Trumpets bleated. Robb glimpsed crimson cloaks rallying around a banner of golden lion quartered with crown, the sigil of Sir Adam Marbrand. Marbrand spotted the northern king, wheeled his horse, and bellowed. Knights lowered lances. Water splashed. Arrows hissed. Tyrell longbows released a hail that glittered sunlit for a heartbeat, before thudding through mail. Horses screamed. Robb roared. Charged. Impact. Smashed like worlds colliding. Steel biting steel, wood shattering. Talon knocked a lancer aside. Robb's blade flashed, severing reins, then throat. Blood sprayed pink on brackish pool. Beside him, Mage Mormont swung a spiked mace, caving helm and skull alike. The battle became a blur. Gray cloaks wrestling crimson, river mud sucking feet, the air thick with salt and copper. Robb felt his right shoulder flare but fought through. Each downward stroke drove weariness away. On the oak ridge, Tarly directed volleys with crisp efficiency, arrows falling in metered waves so enemy shields lifted reflexively, at which moment Serwyn's pike speared through the reeds into exposed flanks. Lannister lines buckled. Marbrand fought valiantly, but panic rippled when his horse went down under 3 shafts. Ramsay's detachment, held in reserve, surged forward, screaming battle hymns. The linen wraps slipped from their poles, revealing the flayed man anew. Tarly cursed but could not recall them in time. The sight chilled Lannister morale. Men turned, falling under Bolton blades. Among the rout, Robb dismounted to aid a reach standard-bearer, pinned by a fallen horse. As he heaved the beast's weight enough for the youth to crawl free, a javelin thunked into the mud where his head had been. He spun, faced a Lannister footpad, raising another dart. Before he could defend, Grey Wind leapt, jaw clamping the man's arm. Bone snapped. The man shrieked. Robb's sword ended it swiftly. He met Grey Wind's eyes, gratitude unsaid. By late afternoon, Stonehelm Point was retaken. The watchtower smoldered but stood. Fisherfolk emerged from hiding. Robb ordered healers to tend wounded enemy soldiers, granting them the same water as his own. Tarly oversaw burial details. Ramsay prowled like a bored cat until Robb intercepted him. "We bury prisoners with their skins intact," Robb warned. Ramsay's smile dripped honey. "Ace my king commands." But when he turned, Robb noticed fresh blood staining his boots, darker than battlefield spatter. 2 days, they lingered fortifying the delta. Ravens flew bearing victory, though Robb phrased it as secured harbor, enemy repelled, minimal losses. He omitted flayed banners. When the final barge convoy sailed unhindered, laden with grain, he felt a knot uncoil. Yet each letter home felt like borrowed sunlight, bright but fleeting. On the ride back, news intercepted. Walder Frey had announced nuptials for his daughter Rosalind to Eddard Hay in 10 days' time at the Twins, and requested the king in the North's presence to confirm goodwill. Robb read the scroll, then another from Walder's second son, Sir Stevron, thinly veiled threats. Brynden commented, "Walder sets snares. He waits for prey." Robb looked to the horizon. Every path demands tolls. They reached Highgarden at dusk. Lanterns blazed along parapets to welcome them. Margaery awaited in the main courtyard beside Olenna and Catelyn. When Robb dismounted, she ran to meet him, decorum shed. Her embrace smelled of lavender water and parchment. He held her close, closing eyes. For one breath, war fell away. Preparations resumed with greater fervor. Pavilion smiths began forging ceremonial longsword that would bind their vows. Blade of damascene ripple, crossguard shaped as intertwined vines and direwolf snarls. Maester Tylan oversaw drafting of household merges, Tyrell retainers to Winterfell, northern maids to Highgarden, as cultural liaisons. Scribes developed a joint sigil for use on royal decrees, direwolf rampant intertwined with four-petal rose, roots knotted below, each iteration pinned to a board where Robb and Margaery debated minor flourishes. They laughed at themselves, delighted by the small vanity of designing futures. Catelyn, however, carried heavier tidings. A raven from Riverrun bearing news that Hoster Tully's health worsened. She intended to depart after the wedding, bringing Brynden. Robb tried to mask worry. Catelyn touched his cheek. Fathers fade so sons may stand. Marry her, Robb, and stand tall. Men. He promised and watched her walk away, shawl fluttering like a farewell. It was the eve of their wedding when the storm broke. Clouds muscled across sunset, thunder rumbled low. Inside candlelit halls, final fittings took place. Margaery stood upon a dais as seamstresses smoothed the sable cloak. "Got." Oliver Frey entered, face stark. "Riders at the gate," he whispered. "Lannister colors, but the men claim truce. They carry a box for the king." Alarm rippled. Olenna hustled Margaery off the dais. Robb, alerted, strode to the audience chamber, hands resting on sword hilt. Lannister envoys, 2 knights and a herald, knelt before him, presenting a cedar chest sealed with golden wax. The herald proclaimed, "A wedding gift from Lord Tywin Lannister. Token of goodwill." Robb gestured, and Mage sliced the seal. Inside lay a red silk pillow supporting a wolf's head wrought of gold, eyes set with rubies. Beneath its jaws sat a rolled parchment. Robb unfolded the note. "May your union prosper as gold endures. Remember, everything has its price, and every debt its collector. Tywin of House Lannister." Edmure hissed. Meg spat. Robb replaced the wolf head. "Tell your lord thanks for his generosity. I send in return crates of grain to soothe the hunger in the Westerlands." The envoys bowed, clearly bewildered by the unruffled response, and were escorted out. Yet once alone, Robb exhaled, rubbing temples. Tywin's message was no mere taunt. It warned, "I see you. I count the cost." Margaery joined him. She gazed at the golden wolf. "An effigy meant to remind us gold corrupts." Robb pushed the chest shut. "Or meant to lure greed. But we are not for sale. Bend an hour." Her smile curved. "Then let us prove it tomorrow." Thunder boomed. Wedding day dawned, shrouded in gray mist. Superstitious servants muttered of ill omen. But Margaery ordered every lantern lit, every bell rung. "We craft our own weather," she declared. By noon the mist dissipated, and shafts of sunlight broke through clouds like blessings. Highgarden's upper garden had been transformed into an open-air sept. Marble columns wreathed in evergreen, aisles strewn with wolf's bane and white lilies. Seats filled swiftly, Karstarks in thick furs, Tyrell cousins in silks, Baratheon exiles seeking new patronage, even a smattering of Greyjoy emissaries curious to gauge this rising power. Robb waited at the altar beside Septon Maribald, wearing a doublet of deep gray leather embossed with tiny roses at the shoulders. Over one arm he carried the bridal cloak, a masterwork lined with golden silk for Tyrell warmth, outer sable for northern resilience. Grey wind lay at his feet, calm, yet vigilant. Music rose. Harp, lute and reed flute, weaving the northern lay, beneath the weirwood boughs into the reach melody, summer's bloom. Margaery appeared at the aisle's head on her father's arm. Gown of ivory so fine it seemed midday starlight. Around her waist, a belt of woven vines, studded with opals, glinted like dew. Gasps rippled. As she passed each row, children scattered petals. White for innocence, red for fortitude, blue for memory. When she reached Robb, her eyes glistened, yet she held composure. Septon Maribald spoke of the 7, of the old gods silent yet present in the rustle of leaves. He bound their hands with a ribbon dyed in northern indigo and reach green. Vows spoken. Robb promised to shield her from winter's wrath, she to kindle fires that would never dim. At the culmination, Robb placed the cloak about her shoulders. She lifted his hand to settle it. They sealed vows with a kiss. Cheers erupted, horns blared, doves released. But unnoticed by many, at the garden's edge Sybil Westerling dabbed eyes. Whether tears of joy or regret, none could tell. Nearby, Ramsay adjusted gloves, boredom masking calculation. And high above, upon a watchtower, a raven perched bearing a scroll no man had yet read. Word from the twins that Walder Frey planned to close his gates until the insult of King's absence was satisfied. For now, though, revelry drowned dread. Tables groaned beneath artistry. Honey-glazed suckling boar in a bed of fresh thyme. Trout baked in clay shells cracked open at table. Pears poached in arbor wine. Robb toasted to summer in winter's heart. Voices echoed. Margaery shared a smile with Catelyn, who nodded approval, though sorrow shadowed her features, remembering absent kin. At sunset, while minstrels played, Robb drew Margaery aside to the same balcony where they had shared first honest hopes. Below, the realm swayed in dance. Masks glittered. Tyrell green mingled with stark gray until colors blurred. Thunderheads limned with gold edged the horizon, but the air remained warm. Our season begins, Robb murmured. But seasons change, Margaery answered. We will adapt, Dorta. He brushed a curl from her cheek. Thank you for trusting a boy crowned too soon. She raised his hand to her lips. Thank you for seeing more than a rose. Laughter reached them, Meg insisting a reach squire test northern mead. The boy sputtered. Great John roaring approval. Life unfurled, imperfect yet luminous. A wind stirred jasmine vines. Robb wrapped the bridal cloak tighter about Margaery's shoulders. Together, they watched stars kindle one by one. Somewhere a direwolf howled, answer carried across leagues of dark. Margaery closed her eyes, listening not with fear, but with wonder. Below, lamps flickered. Servants lit new wicks. Beyond the castle, caravans rolled steady north. Sails billowed white, and ravens winged through dusk, each bearing missives that would steer kingdoms. Some carried tidings of grain delivered. Others carried poison thoughts, barbed and waiting. But tonight parchment rested, steel slept. Tonight, a wolf lay beside a rose beneath heavens vast enough to cradle both. When the first raindrop fell, it landed on Robb's upturned palm, cool and clean. Margaery covered his hand with hers. Summer rain, she whispered. Blessing, he agreed. They did not withdraw from the shower. They remained, eyes shining, as rain embroidered their cloaks with silver. For a moment, it seemed the sky itself recognized this fragile hope, and tried, in its ancient, wordless way, to water it, so roots might burrow deep, so bloom might withstand winter's howl when it came at last. Ka. Highgarden slept at last, though the echo of pipes and laughter still shimmered like heat above empty flagstones, and torches guttered in alcoves where petals lay bruised beneath silken shoes. In the solar at the heart of the keep, a single lamp burned low, gilding the frescoes with a honey glow as soft as dreamlight. Robb and Margaery sat together on the cushioned window seat that overlooked the moon-silvered maze, their wedding finery shed for plain wool and linen. Outside, warm summer rain hissed through myrtle and rosebush, drumming gentle cadence on the leaded panes. Inside, they spoke in murmurs, tasting the strangeness of belonging that had rooted itself in a day. Margaery's hair was unbraided now, a chestnut river spilling over Robb's shoulder as she leaned to study the constellations smeared across the dripping glass. He traced idle circles over the back of her hand, marveling at the roughness a quill can etch into soft skin, feeling her pulse beat calm and sure beneath his thumb. They spoke of trivial things at first. His awkward tumble with Maeve's bear cloak during the bride's dance. How Loras had nearly set his sleeve alight leaning too close to a candelabrum. but laughter soon dwindled to thoughtful silence. Robb's eyes roved the garden below, searching shadows, as though reading the omens hidden in each twist of hedge. "Tomorrow," he said, voice low, "the first carts reach Hornwood Holdfast. Galbart writes that river ice still lingers beside the weeping water even now. The grain may spoil if the nights turn." Margaery rested her head against his shoulder. "Then we send cedar crates lined in pitch. Arbor men use them when they ship lemons north. I will write the cooper masters at dawn." She felt, rather than saw, his answering smile, a curve of gratitude, mixed with disbelief that she would take such care with logistics most queens left to stewards. "You mean to rule, don't you?" he whispered. "Rule, garden, guide." "Whichever word best suits the hour," she answered. Rain intensified, rattling the casement. Robb lifted her hand to his lips. "In the north," he said, "we bind new-cut timber with tarred rope to stop the sap from bleeding out. I cannot give you spring blossoms in Winterfell, but I will bind our halls with warmth enough that no frost steals in." She turned, eyes catching lamp glow, and kissed him once, light yet certain. For a moment, they were merely man and woman, nothing of crowns or bannermen breathing between. Then bells tolled twice for the hour, and duty's thin veil slipped back across their shoulders. They rose, fingers still twined, and crossed the corridor to the royal apartments. Servants had scattered rushes scented with mint upon the carpets. Candles stood ready, unlit, beside a flagon of pear brandy and 2 pewter cups. Robb dismissed the guards with a nod. Alone, he shut the door, and Margaery felt nerves flutter, swift but real, beneath her ribs. He sensed it, stepped back, and offered a half-bow, as though on tourney field. "Lady of Winter," he said, choosing the old northern honorific. She straightened, smiled, and answered, "Lord of Summer Snow," a phrase she had heard old Nan once attribute to Bale the Bard. Their laughter chased discomfort out like mice. No more words were needed. He crossed the room, poured brandy, passed her a cup, then lifted his own. Liquid fire slid down throats. Heat blossomed. Rain muted the world until only their breaths measured time. Later, after tenderness and wonder, and the whispered unraveling of every knot of doubt, Margaery curled against his chest, beneath sable-lined sheets, listening to the thunder of his heart, as though it were a drum summoning armies. Outside, clouds began to peel open. A shard of moonlight slipped across the bed, silver on skin and tangled hair. She traced the direwolf tattooed in scar-pale lines over his shoulder, an old wound almost forgotten. He caught her hand, kissed the palm, murmured, "Ours now." She slept. Dawn crawled in slow, bleary gold. Robb roused at first light, accustomed to campaign schedules, and rose careful not to wake her. Gray wind lounged on the hearthrug, tail thumping soft recognition but no bark. Robb washed swiftly, donned a plain tunic, and padded barefoot to the balcony. Low fog blanketed orchards and vineyards alike, dew-beating spiderwebs strung between balustrades. He inhaled earthy sweetness, and felt the wary peace of a world holding breath. Somewhere down in the bailey a rooster crowed. A stable boy's laugh followed, bright as brass. And Robb's thoughts leapt northward to a different yard where Bran once raced ponies at dawn, limbs all angles and joy. The memory's ache was dulled by distance and by the knowledge that grain wagons even now creaked toward that empty courtyard. He whispered a vow to plant dwarf fruit trees beside Winterfell's glass gardens, come spring. If spring returned. By the time Margaery stirred, servants brought pottage sweetened with almond milk, and Olenna's parchment bristled upon a tray. Lists of retainers volunteering for northern service, updated dowry ledgers, and a crisp reminder that one unrestored castle was worth 2 in rumor. Margaery read while Robb wolfed oats. She circled names with a quill, tapping lip when uncertain, then drafted instructions to promote 3 women of minor houses to her traveling household. For loyalty, not lineage, she explained. Robb grinned, mouth full. She dabbed the corner of his lips with a napkin, smirked at the boyishness. It felt impossibly intimate, this ordinary act after nights of war councils. Council resumed in earnest by mid-morning, summoned to the lower hall where a tapestry of Garth green hand loomed over a horseshoe table. Edmure, lean from fretting, reported ravens from Seaguard claiming ironborn longships, sighted again off Casey. Confirmation of continuing raids rather than strategic push inland. Meg, arms crossed, relayed word from Bear Island. Snow had dusted the pines already, unseasonably early. Garland produced sketched diagrams of fortifications around the neck, causeways reinforced with wooden towers that could be torched to deny passage. Robb approved, though he doubted Moat Cailin would fall lightly whether towers stood or burned. The room smelled of leather and ink, and the faintest undercurrent of roses from the garden windows flung wide for air. Discussion turned, inevitably, toward the twins. Walder Frey's latest raven fluttered before them, its message more acid than last. He would withhold river tolls on all grain barges, unless the king in the north appeared in person to witness Rosalind's wedding, bringing such tribute as might prove his continued esteem. Brynden snorted. Esteem is a thin cloak against winter. He means ransom. Robb rubbed eyes. We cannot abandon the caravans north of the twins. They need passage. Margaery, seated between Garland and Lady Mage, asked quietly, what of sending an envoy instead? A statesman bearing both our seals, lavish enough to flatter but shrewd enough to brook no insult. Robb's gaze drifted past Tyrell faces to Oliver Frey, standing near the wall in modest doublet. The youth straightened under sudden scrutiny, color blooming in cheeks. Send me, your grace, he said tremulously. My grandsire trusts I am harmless. He'll reveal more to me than to strangers, and if insult comes, I can warn you quick. Edmure frowned, but Garland laid a reassuring hand on the lad's shoulder. He rides faster than any courier I've seen, Garland attested. Robb studied Olivar's earnest eyes, then inclined his head. You may go, but not alone. Sir Desmond Grell will accompany, and a Tyrell legalist to document every word. He met Margaery's subtle nod. This too. A pedal laid in place. When the council ended, Ramsay Bolton materialized near the door, idling where his presence felt accidental yet unavoidable. His pale gaze flicked to Robb's hand clasped over Margaery's. Amusement curled his mouth. A lovely session, your graces, he drawled. I hear you plan hearths of stone pine in Winterfell. Stone pine burns hot, but splits easy. Best season it long. Margaery smiled pleasantly. Perhaps you might recommend a northern forester skilled in the seasoning. Ramsay's eyes glinted. I know several who could peel bark clean. Robb interposed. My steward will consult you. He felt, rather than saw. Meg's fingers twitched toward her axe. Ramsay dipped a mocking bow and drifted away, whistling some nursery air. That evening, Robb and Margaery walked unseen upon the castle's eastern rampart, cloaks clasped tight against the chill sweeping from the inland sea. Below, lanterns bobbed along the quay, where the grain fleet's second wave loaded casks of dried apples and sacks of rye. Sailors called to one another in a dozen accents, reach lilts mingling with guttural Bear Island baritones, and the sing-song of Sisterton smugglers forgiven for a season in exchange for their holds. A Tyrell carpenter balanced on a spar, hammering pitch-soaked planks into place. Sparks flew. Robb felt pride bloom. The first tangible strand of alliance manifested in canvas and rope. Midnight found them still pacing, trading stories. Margaery coaxed him to speak of Ned beyond the legend. How his father mended saddles beside the stablemaster to quiet fear on the night before Robert's rebellion. How he never raised his voice except when instructing the maesters in small folk grievances. In turn, Robb coaxed from her memories of her grandmother teaching her to read the great ledger of Highgarden before she could recite the seven, of sneaking into the kitchens to eat candied pecans. They laughed under stars until exhaustion tugged at limbs. As they turned toward the stair, a raven passed overhead, winging north with frantic urgency. Robb tracked it silently, foreboding settling. 2 days later, the foreboding found voice. The raven from the wall perched in the rookery, soot-black feathers ruffled by oppressive heat despite the season. Maester Tylan broke the seal, read, and paled. He found Robb mid-spar with Garland. Sweat slicked both men, sand speckled their boots. Tylan wheezed out the news. Lord Commander Jor Mormont dead, slain in mutiny at Craster's Keep. The Night's Watch splintered, Some survivors fled south, others held the fist, wildlings massing like storm clouds. Robb felt the courtyard tilt. Jon, he thought first. Brother of his heart. He mastered the urge to seize Tyland's shoulders and demand details he could not yet know. Instead, he dismissed training and gathered the council. Catelyn read the letter aloud in the main hall. Lantern light etched hollows beneath her eyes. Each phrase seemed to age her. Maege slammed fist to table. My niece Alice wrote last moon of unrest. I should have marched north then. Bryndon's voice rasped. Mutiny breeds when men are hungry and desperate. Robb's mind raced. If the watch collapsed, the wildlings would surge. Worse, whatever lay beyond them would follow. Margaery, absorbing the unspoken magnitude, whispered, "How many nights march from the wall to Winterfell?" "A month," Robb answered. "On foot and burdened. Less if driven by terror." Silence swallowed the room. Finally he spoke. "We must reinforce the watch. Grain is only the first lifeline. We send smiths to repair forges, masons to shore towers, and loyal men, archers, trackers. I will write to Howland Reed for Crannog scouts." Garland offered reach bowmen familiar with hunting in high forests. The council dissolved into plans before despair could root. That night Margaery found Robb alone in the Godswood courtyard, kneeling before an imported heart tree sapling gifted by House Reed, its red leaves trembling in alien soil. He listened to wind rustle the leaves, willing them to carry prayers further than his own reach. She knelt beside him, folded her hands. "Teach me," she said softly. He guided her fingers into the woven knot of his own. Showed how northerners pressed palm to bark, opening blood if need be to seal oath. She did not flinch when he pricked thumb with dagger, nor when he pressed the tiny smear against the trunk. She matched the gesture without prompting. Together they whispered for the safety of brothers in black they had never met, for the iron of the wall not to melt beneath fiery ruin. The sapling's leaves stirred though the air lay still. Whether omen or mere breeze neither could say. While Robb shored the northern front, Tywin Lannister moved on the southern. From his mobile headquarters at Harrenhal's scorched courtyard, he penned orders to Sir Gregor Clegane: ride for the Mander's Mouth, render the Delta unusable, torch granaries, salt wells. Sir Adam Marbrand, recovering from wounds, volunteered new assault columns of Westerland levies, hungry for coin. Tywin sanctioned but ordered caution. He needed not Pyrrhic victory that left him unable to pay his own sellswords. Ravens flew also to the Golden Company across the narrow sea, promising weighty contracts come spring. His chessboard broadened. In the Reach, rumor flowed thicker than rivers. Small folk told of gray-cloaked men prowling crossroads, inns asking after flowers with wolf's teeth. Others whispered Frey assassins had bribed a high septon to denounce the wedding. Merchants arriving from Old Town carried stories of red priests on streets predicting dragons of snow and ash. The faith militant remained silent, but their silence clanged louder than bells. Robb countered rumor with transparency. He opened Highgarden's counting house ledgers to public inspection, let bakers display stamps of direwolf and rose on each loaf sold at markets. Proof grain arrived. Still, doubt wormed. Sibel Westerling lingered on edges of court, neither adversary nor ally. One afternoon, she caught Margaery alone in the solar embroidery circle dismissed early. She pressed a velvet pouch into the queen's hands. "My daughter's tears," she said. Inside lay tiny fragments of blue jasper. "Jane weeps still, but she weeps safely. Guard that." Margaery thanked her, understanding the fragile piece coded into the gesture. Jean sheltered, but her sorrow might yet become blade in the wrong hands. Secrets, once spilled, cannot be unspilled, and Sibel reminded the queen of that unspoken debt. Oliver Frey departed with Sir Desmond within the week, bearing oaths and Tyrell coin for tolls. Margaery watched from the East Tower as their pennants shrank to moats along the Rose Road. Heart tight with twin tendrils of hope and dread. In the yard below, Ramsay oversaw the drilling of a detachment he dubbed Snow Guard. 30 men outfitted in mismatched armor stripped from battlefields, painted white over rust. They practiced silent formation with cudgels, breaking ranks only when Ramsay's whistle pierced the air. Garland remarked warily that such men looked less guard than butchers. Robb replied they would travel north soon, far from Highgarden's halls. 8 evenings after the wedding, a distant horn brought everyone to ramparts. The second grain fleet returning early, sails trimmed ragged. They limped into harbor before dawn, decks cluttered with wounded. Captain Harlan Redwine staggered ashore, scarlet seeping through bandages, and presented himself to the king. Galleys under King's Landing banners struck near Maidenpool, he croaked. Arrows lit with wildfire. His first mate unfurled a singed flag. Tyrell rose half consumed by green-tinged flame. Robb's stomach clenched. Wildfire. Only Cersei's treasury could commission such hell. He ordered healers, dispatched ravens to White Harbor to delay the next voyage, and convened council before the sun fully rose. Plans shifted like sand. More escorts, thicker hull planking, catapults installed on barges. Maester Tylan suggested alchemists from Lies who knew counteragents to wildfire. Olenna scoffed but sent coin nonetheless. Margaery spent hours in the healed sailors' ward, doling herbal salves, listening to accounts of green fire hissing upon water. One archer described seeing faces screaming in the flames. His hands shook uncontrollably. Margaery held them till the tremors eased, then rose with determination hard as steel. Fear must not gain purchase. That night, thunder rolled again. Summer's convulsions unspent. Lightning forked the sky, illuminating distant silhouettes of siege towers along Old Town's horizon. Drills for defense never stopped. Robb stood beneath the colonnade, watching rain sluice off gargoyle mouths, Margaery beside him. Notification arrived from the twins. Oliva reached Walder's court, was received coldly yet safe. Walder demanded confirmation the royal couple would feast at the wedding by moon's turn. Robb's jaw set. The grain cannot wait, nor can the watch. Margaery placed a hand on his chest. "Then send me," she said. His eyes widened. "Alone? Not alone. With a guard, my grandmother, Laura's. Enough to flatter, not enough to frighten." Robb paced. Lightning flashed again. Finally he shook his head. "If Walder plots treachery, I'd send you into the trap." Margaery countered. "If he plots, he expects you, not me. My presence would disarm suspicion." He refused. She did not press. Trust, like sapling, bent but did not snap. Word reached them next morning of Balon Greyjoy's death, tumbled from Rope Bridge at Pike during black squall. Victarion's longships sheared off raids, hastening home for Kingsmoot. The Westerlands breathed, Tywin less so. Robb saw opportunity. Less ironborn threat freed Northmen for the Wall. He wrote to Lady Barbary Dustin, estranged yet proud, offering to restore lands lost if she mustered 300 horse for Eastwatch. Olive Branch extended, though outcome uncertain. Autumn's first, crisp edge crept into evenings. Highgarden's grape harvest commenced, and the castle thrummed with trample of bare feet, in vats. Purple juice staining laughter. Robb joined for an hour, rolling trousers, stomping with Orton Merryweather and a gaggle of Tyrell cousins. His laughter rose, unforced. Margaery watched, delight shining. Before allowing herself to be pulled in, skirts hitched. They emerged. Sticky shined. Cheeks crimson. And were hosed by giggling servants with buckets of well water. The image, king and queen drenched, joyous, traveled in gossip truer than any decree, and for a time the realm believed peace near. Yet beyond the Mander, a darker vintage fermented. Ramsay's snow guard vanished one dawn. Garland, rousing patrols, found their bunkhouse deserted, save for strips of linen whiter than dove feathers, each strip bearing a sigil crudely scrawled in pig's blood, a flayed rose entwined with a severed wolf's paw. The message curdled air. Robb dispatched trackers, but no bootprint remained. The men had melted like frost. He confronted Ramsay in the jousting yard, voice quiet, but edged with northern cold. Ramsay feigned surprise, claimed deserters. "If I catch them," he promised, "their skins hang at Winterfell's gate as warning." Robb's warning came without flourish. "Send any more threats in Rose's guise and I'll hang the flare, not the flag." Ramsay's smile did not falter. but his eyes sparked. Witnesses later murmured that when he bowed, he bit his tongue until blood welled. That same night, Maester Tylan chanced upon Donal, the boy from Bolton Camp, fleeing the rookery with scroll in hand. Intercepted, the lad clawed Tylan's face, attempted to hurl himself from parapet. Guards seized him. Under interrogation, he confessed to smuggling ravens to the Dreadfort, coated with reports of troop numbers and grain routes. Ramsay denied knowledge. Robb's patience thinned to filament. He ordered Donal confined pending trial but spared whipping, remembering Theon's flayed fingers once displayed at Winterfell and vowing to break the cycle. Still, each betrayal weighted heavier. A week later, ravens shrieked of Lannister victory. Sir Philip Foote seized Tumbleton, cutting the Rose Road north. Refugees poured south. Scouts spoke of lion banners snapping arrogant in autumn breeze. Olenna slammed her cane. We prune one weed, another sprouts. Robb formed rapid response. Detach Meg's Bears and Serwyn Spears to retake Tumbleton, hold until reinforcements. Before they departed, Margaery presented each captain with a white-dyed rose pricked through a bit of wolf's fur. Token of unity. Meg, touched, promised to wear it until saplings sprouted through her ribs. Letters from Jon finally arrived via silent carrier Raven. He lived, risen to command a ragged band of loyal brothers, marched to retake Craster's Keep and avenge the Old Bear. His script carried urgency. Free folk unite under a king named Mance. Giants walk, the dead rise. Robb felt ice trace spine reading those words aloud to council. Skeptical nobles scoffed at talk of giants. Margaery did not. She had seen wildfire devour water. Little now amazed. She suggested sending lanterns etched with sun crystals to light the wall at night. Symbolic gesture, yet symbolism nourished courage. Robb agreed, instructed Reach glaziers to craft. Autumn bled into frost. Margaery woke one dawn to find a single red leaf fallen from the heart tree sapling on her balcony sill, veins laced with ice. She pressed it within a journal, wrote beneath. Winter sends its first envoy. Robb joined her moments later with fresh ink on his fingertips. Maps of river fords newly scouted. They ate pomegranate seeds and rye toast. Spoke of erecting warm houses along the King's Road for traveling peasants. Outside, sky bruised violet. Crows wheeled. The banners above Highgarden, direwolf and rose, whipped eastward, as though already searching the road that would carry them north at last. Preparation for departure consumed weeks. Masons created marble statues gifted by the Tyrells for Winterfell's Great Hall. Herbalists sealed barrels of lavender, rosemary and mint to perfume drafty corridors. Northern farriers reshod every horse with iron thicker than Reach roads required. Margaery oversaw allocation of winter wardrobes for her ladies. Sealskin cloaks, bear fur muffs, mittens knitted by Sisterton fisherwives. Olenna scoffed, yet ordered a sable mantle trimmed with jade. So I may shame those northern icicles of fashion. Robb, consulted on travel route, chose the slower coast road, bypassing Tumbleton siege lines, ensuring wagons remained close to shipborne supplies. Garland and Loras elected to remain south rallying defenses. Their parting from Margaery brimmed with jesting bravado yet left her throat tight. On the eve of departure, Highgarden hosted one final supper. Modest by Reach standards yet lavish to northern eyes. Venison pie, brown with pepper, lamprey broth. Candied hazelnuts. Bards sang petals upon the snow, while servants extinguished half the torches, casting the hall into intimate glow. Robb toasted their hosts. Spoke of gardens tucked beneath hot springs in Winterfell where roses might survive. Laughter warm, but undercurrent solemn. Tomorrow, the road. Later, Robb walked the palace alone, seeking last memory of scented corridors. He passed alcove, where first he glimpsed Margaery's smile, paused. From shadows, Sybil Westerling emerged. She held a small wooden box bound in silver ribbon. "For your Gracie's journey," she murmured, offering it. Robb opened the lid. Inside lay a scarf of dove-gray wool embroidered with the sigil of House Stark entwined with a single blue flower. My daughter's own hand, Sybil said. She wanted you warm. Guilt pricked, but gratitude overlaid. He thanked her with soft words. She bowed, disappearing as quiet as mist. Dawn of departure broke clear. Sky crystalline, breath pluming white even this far south. The Rose Road glittered frost-rimmed. Caravans assembled. 30 wagons for the bridal entourage, 50 for grain and tribute, 100 horse. Robb rode at columns 4 in wolf-headed helm, Margaery beside him in cloak of russet trimmed cream fur. Grey wind trotted sentinel. Bells of Highgarden pealed, petals rained from ramparts. Red, white, pink, catching in manes and standard tassels. Olenna waved her cane menacingly at the chill, climbed into a cushioned cart with 2 casks of arbor, for medicinal use. As gates swung wide, Robb inhaled deep rose-laden air one last time, then spurred north. Miles fell beneath hooves. By midday vineyards faded to wheat stubble, then to heathland tinted bronze. The horizon yawned wide. At night, they camped under canopies of cedar poles. Tyrell cooks conjured stews aromatic enough to make northern men sigh, while Margaery's maidens parceled blankets. Robb inspected sentries, then returned to shared tent, shed mail shirt, and lay listening to wind whistle through guy ropes. Margaery curled into crook of his arm, whispered a reach lullaby. He slipped into sleep. On the 5th day, outriders clattered back with word. Frey banners 2 leagues east, intercept course. Robb ordered defensive formation. Shields risen, archers in hedgerow. Yet when Frey column appeared, it flew not only twin towers, but white flag and chests of dried figs, a gift from Lord Walder for the Queen. The envoy, Big Walder, child thin, presented letters of safe passage and congratulations. Margaery accepted with gracious bow. Robb studied the lad's darting eyes, recognized fear overshadowing mischief. After Freys withdrew, Maester Tylan broke the fig chest apart. Within figs lay a sealed scroll, hidden. It bore Oliver's cipher. Wedding feast advanced, tensions high, suggest delaying your arrival. Frey knights, restless. Ramsay's men seen near Lord Walder. Robb folded parchment slowly. Bolton and Frey, he murmured. Wolves among roses indeed. Night council convened in Whispering Pine Grove. Options debated. Alter route west through Seaguard. Would double travel time, risk Lannister patrols, push straight, trust to honor, or send vanguard and hold Queen back. Margaery listened, then spoke. We will not fracture this union's face. If Walder schemes, he expects fear. Let us arrive neither early nor late, but on our terms, and cloak ourselves in the certainty that right walks beside us. Her calm carried weight. Decision. Continue, but dispatch spies to map every inch of twins. Post signal riders. Ravens soared ahead bearing courtesy replies. The column resumed. Robb sharpened his sword nightly, edge already keen, but rituals steadied nerves. Margaery penned letters to each watch commander along the neck, promising shipments of turnip seed and salt pork, come thaw. She wrote, when winter lifts, the earth will remember we fed it. Such letters she knew might outlive battles. As they crossed into the riverlands, scars of war deepened. Villages gutted, orchards axed to stumps, carrion birds wheeling. Small folk peered from burrows. When they recognized the Wolf Rose banners, hope flickered. Children waved. Margaery ordered distribution of rye from a supply wagon. Robb added 3 barrels of saltfish. Word traveled ahead like warming breeze. 2 days' ride south of River Run, Catelyn parted company to hasten to her father's bedside. The farewell carved hollow in Robb's core, yet he schooled features. Mother pressed a kiss to his cheek, whispered, "Trust your heart when steel fails," and rode riverward flanked by Brynden and 20 spears. As her banner dwindled, Margaery squeezed Robb's gauntleted fingers. They shared silence until dusk. That night, campfires speckled a meadow damp with ground fog. In the command pavilion, Robb pored over Walder Frey's family tree. So many branches one might hang a kingdom from them thrice. Margaery brewed tea of chamomile and licorice root, set cup beside him. He spoke without looking up. In my father's time, Walder folded to Robert's crown with barely a hiss. Yet insult him once and he stores the sting like bee in winter. Margaery sipped her own cup. Then we soothe, not sting. We weave honey from words. A distant owl hooted. She added, but we travel with nets. At first light, horns awakened camp. Scouts returned breathless. Bandits along Green Fork, wearing amalgam of Bolton, Frey, and Lion sigils. Raiders harrying supply wagons. Robb dispatched mage and bear riders. Clash quick, brutal. They captured 2. Southron sellswords paid in Lannister silver, stamped with the year's mint. Under threat of dragging, they confessed to meeting a pale man with burning eyes, who directed them to strike grain lines. Promised double pay if wagons burned before Winterfell. Ramsay's ghost, though description vague. Robb shackled them for transport to River Run cells. Rain returned, cold autumn soak. Roads turned mire, wagons mired axle deep. Tyrell engineers laid corduroy with felled alder trunks. Progress slow data. Spirits flagged. Robb walked line, shoulder to shoulder with teamsters, lending hand to heave. Margaery waded calf deep, dress hemmed high, praising each effort. At dusk, a smith glimpsed her shivering, offered cloak. She accepted. Laughter warming the air. Such moments glued armies stronger than sigils. As the twins' towers crested horizon one pale afternoon, a hush rippled chain-like down the column. Crumbling granite rose from river flats, banners limp in mist. Blue on gray, the twins stoic, impassive. Lightning flickered beyond hills, though no thunder followed. Robb ordered halt on ridge, just out of arrow range. He, Margaery, Olenna, and advisors surveyed bridge keeps through spyglass. Torches few, gates shut, battlements sparsely manned. An odd stillness. Oliver's last raven warned of tension. Now gates appeared sealed against the world. Edmure muttered, Walder revels in drama. Margaery felt chill that owed nothing to wind. A lone rider emerged from South Tower, banner of parley white. He rode halfway across bridge, halted, unfurled scroll tied to lance, and galloped back. Scouts retrieved it midstream by boat. Scroll read, celebration preparations demand privacy. Guests to arrive sunset tomorrow, unarmed, numbers limited, per prior custom. Robb frowned. Custom indeed. Yet the phrasing reeked of dictation. Still, refusal risked insult blooming into siege. Olenna sucked teeth. Old fool aims to pluck tails of lions and wolves both. Robb set jaw. We go, but we choose the tune. He devised entry. First wave of musicians and servants, unarmed but flanked by hidden archers, disguised as minstrels. Mage to remain camped on ridge with 300. Crossbows sighted on towers. Signal torches prearranged. Margaery prepared her gown. Not the ivory splendor worn at her own wedding, but deep forest green, threads silvering like moonlight on leaves. First glimpse of northern palette. She braided hair with white rosebuds dipped in honey to preserve bloom. Olenna eyed result, declared half flower, half ghost. Perfect. Robb polished his mail, but over it wore soft surcoat of gray trimmed subtle green. He strapped sword plain, leaving Queen's gift blade in chest to honor Frey's unarmed request, yet feel steel still. Sunset bled crimson when they approached the bridge. Musicians struck merry tune on lute and hautboy. Frey guards opened gates with theatrical creak. Inside torches blazed, banners draped, tables groaned with roast capon and barrels of ale. Walder Frey waited upon dais, flesh sagging in folds, wry grin deepening furrows. Welcome, welcome, he croaked, eyes flicking to Margaery with predatory curiosity. She curtsied, Robb whispering, smiled just wide enough. Your hospitality is famed, my lord. Robb bowed perfunctorily. Wine cups thrust into hands, toasts rose. Hours wore on. Musicians played, courses paraded. Conversation forced, brittle. Walder angled jests about betting nights and broken betrothals. Margaery parried with sweet compliments to Frey daughters. Olenna skewered with sharper barbs delivered sweetly. Robb's senses throbbed. Too many shadows, guards swapped often. He noted Bolton men near exits, linen off revealing crimson sigils gleaming. Ramsay nowhere visible. Rain started, pounding roof planks, muffling outside noise. At midpoint of feast, Walder clapped hands. A hush fell. He toasted, "Our honored wolf," and his lovely Rose, for upholding alliance, offered gift. A cloak of gray-dyed weasel hides lined with rose satin. Laughter rippled. Margaery rose, thanked politely. Wine refilled goblets. Musicians struck, "The Maiden Fair." Robb stiffened. Song had signaled attack at Oxcross once. His gaze snapped to drummers. One tapped rhythm wrong, off-beat heart. He caught Meg's eye through doorway slit, saw her nod, alert. Sudden clanged out Oar. Doors slammed. Crossbows cranked. Time fractured. Robb flung table, snatching concealed dagger. Olenna flipped cane, blade slid free. Margaery dipped. Wine pitcher shattered behind. Walder cackled. "A song for new seasons." Bolts whispered deadly. First missed Robb by hair, thunking pillar, second tore lute strings. Northern archers disguised as minstrels loosed return fire. Arrows sprouting in fray breastplates. Chaos erupted. Dishes crashed. Women screaming, dogs barking. Bolton men surged for dais. Meg's warriors crashed through side door with bare standard, axes whirling. Margaery found herself behind overturned bench beside Sybil Westerling, who shrieked and shoved something into Queen's hand. A vial of oil. "Fire blinds," she hissed. Margaery smashed lantern on floor, doused flame with wine, slicking boards. Robb grappled a Bolton soldier, slammed pommel into helmet. Blood spurted. Walder vanished behind curtain. Horn blast outside signaled Meg's Ridge troops charging bridge. Stone trembled. Amid melee, Ramsay emerged from balcony, crossbow leveled at Robb. Lips peeled in smile. "No skins, just hearts," he purred. Time slowed. Robb wrenched dagger free, but distance too great. Then, a figure vaulted table. Olyvar Frey, dagger upward, buried in Ramsay's side. Bolton's shot loosed wild, bolt skittering across floor. Ramsay howled, smashed Olyvar's temple with stock. Boy sagged. Robb lunged, sword blade finally in hand. He had reclaimed from fallen foe. Slashed diagonal. Ramsay staggered. Surprise bright in eyes. Managed laugh gurgling blood. Stag, wolf, all blush red. He toppled. Archers cut down last flares. Thunderclap shook hall. Silence pooled, broken only by moans. The assault lasted moments yet scarred eras. Robb knelt by Olyvar. Boy breathed, pulse weak. Margaery hurried, pressing cloth to wound. Olenna barked orders, Tyrell guards securing exits. Outside, Mage reported half-bridge under northern control. Frey resistance collapsing. Walder himself slipped down watery stairwell, whereabouts unknown. Robb surveyed carnage. Red slick mixed with rose petals from banquet decor. He caught Margaery's gaze. Shock glossed, but focus intact. He pulled her close. Rain damp through shattered windows, kissing them both. No more dances of knives, she whispered. He kissed her brow. We dance still. Only we choose the rhythm. Through broken archway the rain slackened. Dawn's first bruise tinted sky. Survivors gathered, uncertain. Robb climbed debris, raised sword. Frey treachery ends tonight. The twins belong to the north and the reach until justice served. Cheers answered, ragged yet fierce. Margaery stepped beside him, blood-stained gown billowing like banner. Together they faced the waking realm, forged anew in fire and betrayal but unbowed. Behind them, in shadows, Sybil Westerling whispered over Ramsay's corpse, lips framing words none heard. Beyond river mists, a horn sounded long and low, like giant calling from frozen heights. And somewhere, far beyond, white ravens took wing from the citadel, each bearing a single word, winter. A.K. Smoke drifted across the river like worn lace, torn and re-knotted by gusts that smelled of blood, wet ash. and the bitter tang of quarrel fletching charred where it lay embedded in banquet tables. Dawn had lifted itself on a spine stiff with winter. Bruise-colored clouds strung low over the twins, and frost had crept into every flagstone crack while the carnage was still warm. The wide courtyard between the eastern and western keeps, so often crowded with mule carts and quarreling merchants, now resembled a butcher's refuse pit. Bodies lay tangled in half-frozen puddles of wine and rainwater, tunics already stiffening into grotesque sculpture. Somewhere a horse screamed, answered by the hiss of steel as a Northman ended its suffering. The echo bounced off towers and was swallowed by the river's cold breath. Robb Stark stood not far from the South Tower gatehouse, helm beneath one arm, rainwater sliding down his unbound hair, turning the ruddy strands almost black. In his free hand he held a length of linen once white, now painted with the ruddy brown of dried blood. A discarded strip torn from the false peace banners Bolton men had wrapped over their flaying sigils. He squeezed it until droplets trickled between knuckles. On a hastily erected pyre 10 paces away, Ramsay Snow, still clad in the cuirass he had died in, was lashed upright like a macabre figurehead, moon-pale face gashed by the blade that killed him. They would burn the corpse soon. Robb meant to let every soldier see it first. Margaery moved through the courtyard at a measured pace, cloak weighted with rain. She paused by each wounded man regardless of colors, spoke quiet as a hearth flame, bade scribes record every name. When she reached the foot of the pyre, she lifted her eyes to the corpse, breathed once, and turned to her husband. "The scaffold is ready in the inner ward," she told him, voice hoarse from smoke. "Lord Ryman, Sir Lothar, and Black Walder are secured." She did not mention Olivar, for they both knew the boy hovered between worlds in a tower chamber above, tended by Maester Tylan and a Septa, who whispered prayers for any god to take his payment. Robb nodded, releasing the cloth. "Have the witnesses gathered. Edmure will preside beside me. Lady Mage keeps guard." His gaze drifted east, to the orphaned sparrows perched on broken rafter beams. "I want this judgment finished before the sun climbs the second Merlon." The hall that had last night rung with pipes and laughter, now stank of overturned gravy, blood, and the sour musk of men who expected victory and found axes instead. Frey knights, stripped of mail, knelt in 2 lines along the center aisle, wrists bound, faces mottled with equal parts rage and shame. Between them strode Olenna Tyrell, unbowed though her cane clicked irregularly on sticky rushes, scattering chicken bones. She mounted the dais with a grunt and settled on a high-backed chair, small as a sparrow against the carved oak. Margaery followed, skirts brushing flecks of brain from the boards. Then Robb approached. The hush grew until only the dripping of water through roof holes dared speak. He unsheathed a plain soldier's sword, its edge dark but unchipped, and rested point on the flagstone. "By right of conquest, and by charge of treachery against the crowns of the north end of the Reach, we hold judgment." His voice filled the hall like steady drums over distant ice. "Those who broke guest right stand accused. Let them answer." Ryman Frey, jowls wobbling, tried first the brash coward's gambit. "Guest right was voided the moment a king broke troth to my sister." Edmure backhanded him with a mailed fist. Silence fell anew, except for Ryman's whimper. Sir Lothar, calmer, fixed eyes on Margaery. "The lion paid in gold what the wolf paid only in promises. My lord grandfather chose certainty. Your certainty put quarrels in the breasts of serving girls," Margaery replied, voice feather soft. "Bravery indeed." Robb raised a hand. "Enough. We have one question only. Who among you?" signaled the archers. "Menentai." No one spoke, though a glance flickered from Black Walder to Sir Lothar. Robb continued, "Our law counts the silent as complicit." He turned to the dais edge. "Sir Desmond, bring the ledger." A scribe shuffled forward with a heavy book inked through the night. Every death laid out in neat columns. Name, house, circumstance. Robb lifted the book so the prisoners could see how ink-blotted pages still drying. For every life taken under my protection, a debt. He shut the tome. We begin payment now. The scaffold awaited in the courtyard beneath dripping banners. Executioners were two. Great John Umber, who had survived corridor fighting with a broken arm, hastily splinted, and Sir Garland Tyrell, whose knuckles still bore the welt of a crossbow's string where it snapped. Ryman and Lothar were dragged first. Black Walder cursed until the hood covered him. Axes fell. Blood hissed on wet planks. Some prisoners watched. Others knelt weeping. The dire wolf banners did not flutter. They hung sodden, heavy as obligations. After the heads were taken down, and the ashes from Ramsay's pyre scattered to Riverwind, Robb called the household captains to the council tower. Maps were unrolled across a long trestle table still pocked by stray arrows. A candle guttered, illuminating arterial lines of the Green Fork and the Blue. Meg Mormont slammed her gauntlet atop the crossing south of Derry. "We hold this choke," she said, voice gravel. "Lannister columns will not pass so long as my bears breathe." Garland Tyrell, hunched in a blood-spattered surcoat, traced a route north along the causeways. "If we cannot march the full host through the neck before the first big snow, we must dig supply caches. The bowmen who came with me are woods-wise. They can stay behind, harvest game for stranded wagons." Margaery interjected, fingers resting lightly upon the drawn twins. "Supply caches are prudent, but will fail if guarded by Frey smallfolk sworn to us only in fear. We need keepers whose oath is deeper." Her eyes lifted to Robb. "What of granting holdfasts to the families of the smallfolk who defended us within the hall? Some risked their lives smuggling archers in." She gestured to a scrap of parchment listing 6 names. "Elevate them. They will hold the land with gratitude." Olenna emitted a dry, approving hum. Robb, exhausted but still quick to smile when merit surfaced, agreed. "Draw the charters," he said. "Let the wet ink on those parchments be the seal on new loyalties." Edmure's quill scraped. By afternoon, a rider arrived from River Run, panting. Lord Hoster Tully had passed quietly, hand clasped by Caitlin and the Blackfish. The news fell on Robb's shoulders like a mantle of stone, yet sorrow lingered only a breath before necessity cracked its whip. "Edmure," he said, voice raw, "River Run needs its lord." Edmure's eyes shone wet but steady. "I will ride within the hour. The fish'll guard the wolf's back." He took Robb's forearm in warrior's grip, then turned to clasp Margaery's hand as though sealing packed with silk instead of steel. The column Edmure led from the twins carried 50 prisoners, lesser Freys shackled for ransom, and the picks containing Ramsay's flaying knife wrapped in lead. "To melt and remold," Robb had ordered. A crossbar iron for crow cages. A fitting end. Outside the council chamber, the wind sharpened. Snow that morning had seemed a rumor. Now it gathered in mean little flurries, clinging to every crevice, as though white ravens already shook their wings overhead. In the castle yard, men lit braziers, held hands to flames. Northern soldiers felt a strange comfort in the early frost. Reach men swore colorful oaths, but copied their comrades, muffling foot wraps with straw.ye. At dusk Robb climbed the eastern tower alone. From its parapet, the view spilled miles. Dark Ribbon River, rust-maimed reeds crawling the banks, the pale line of road unwinding south toward Harrenhal. Clouds were woolly bruise and iron. A patch of blood orange lingered at the horizon before snuff. He allowed himself 1 minute of solitude. Heart thudding, ghosts pressing close. In it he addressed the father whose bones lay in 7 hells, the brother who lay broke, the half-brother battling horrors above the wall, and the boyhood self who never imagined kingship. Then he inhaled frost, squared shoulders, and went below. Night watch changed. Olenna commandeered what remained of Walder's wine cellar, rationing bottles to surgeons and to a liver upstairs should he wake. She stationed a Tyrell captain at the stairwell. "If any sellsword so much as breathes near the boy with blade in hand, I will show him how my cane finds soft places," she informed the guard. The man blanched, saluted. Margaery lingered at Olivar's bedside long after midnight, quill poised over parchment. She wrote a letter for the boy's mother but signed nothing, sealed it with rosewax. Either he would live to send it, or he would never need it. Olivar lay still, but color had returned to lips. A leecher's poultice leached the swelling from his skull. When Margaery stepped into corridor, Robb waited, brows drawn. He breathed quiet. She told him. "Breath is enough for tonight," he answered. They retired to a narrow chamber Walder once used for private dinners. Frost crocheted the panes, but inside, a single hearth snapped and sighed. Robb lowered into a chair that groaned like a wounded thing. His wife knelt, unlaced his soaked boots, tugged them free. Each gesture simple, deliberate, grounding. "We ride in 2 days," he said after a silence. She nodded, leaned her forehead to his knee. "To Winterfell. To war." He tangled a hand through her hair. "To hope as well," he murmured. But in his eyes she saw a question still unanswered. She lifted her face. "Speak it." He hesitated. "You have faced knives meant for me. Your blood stains my hall." She touched the drying cut at her forearm, thin, already scabbed. "My blood stains my hall as well," she corrected softly. "We built it together." She rose, sat astride him, knees braced on oak, gaze level. "I chose this road, Wolf. I will walk it until the snows bury us or melt ahead." Outside, a raven croaked. She kissed him. Snow began in earnest on the eve of their departure. It swept from the north like a heedless cavalry, blanketing tents, barges, and the broken bridge alike. Icicles speared from the jaws of stone gargoyles. The twins' courtyards, once ranks of muddy ruts, became white grave fields dotted with black boots prints. Before muster, Robb ordered Ramsay's banner. Skinless man on cross, dragged through slush 10 times then hurled onto the pyre's embers. No symbol of flaying would ride with his column. They marched at first light, under a leaden lid of sky. Horse nostrils steamed. Wheels creaked protest. Scouts rode ahead with dogged patience, cutting new tracks through virgin drifts. Behind, a rearguard of Tyrell crossbowmen manned rebuilt ramparts. The twins would hold as link until Edmure's garrison arrived, then Highgarden men would withdraw south to reinforce Garland. Past Old Stones, the road forked. One branch hugging the Blue Fork valleys where snows fell lighter, the other arrowing toward the neck through tar-black swamps already glazing with brittle ice. Robb chose the valley route for speed, but he detached 300 Karstark riders to race the neck in advance, hauling iron shovels and braided oil rope to strengthen causeway levees. "If melt floods the way, we drown," he warned their captain. "Dig channels." "Sure, what you can. The king rides your road." They rode out, gray cloaks streaming. Day followed day in a hush, broken only by sleet rattling helm rims. The world shrank to white, gray, the occasional smear of sky when clouds cracked. Margaery traveled atop a bay mare named Copper. Her cloak of sable and wool swallowed her to the nose. Often she spoke little, lips blue, but her eyes never ceased flicking from flank to wagon to tree line, counting, weighing, tending by observation what her hands could not reach. She paid children flakes of sweet root to run messages among teamsters. She coaxed songs when fatigue slumped shoulders. Even the hardened Mormont warriors began humming the tune, "Rose of Winter's Hearth," unwittingly. Every 5 leagues, Robb halted the main host long enough to bury caches. Barrels of salted cod and rye, spare fletching, cheese sealed in wax. Over each cache, he posted a log arch daubed with pitch, then banked with snow. Obvious to those who knew the mark, but overlooked by marauders scanning only for wagons. When Margaery asked if he feared Tywin would starve them on the road, he shook his head. "Tywin chases glory, not ghosts. He'll strike where banners gather. Our danger is winter, not lions." Then, still, lions stalked. A fortnight from the neck, outriders skirmished with crimson-cloaked scouts near Maidenpool. One was captured, a boy of 18, eyes wild with cold. Under questioning, he revealed Jaime Lannister led 2,000 heavy horse east, out of Harrenhal toward Seaguard. perhaps to break the newly forged Wolf Rose supply line hugging the coast. Word flashed down the column like lightning. Robb closed his gauntlet. "We push harder," he ordered. Night marches. Groans rose, but none objected. They crossed the Blue Fork at 7 streams beneath a snow-shrouded morning sun. Icicles clanged as they snapped under horses' chests. Robb paused on the far bank to study a grove of ash where crows hunched, feathers puffed. "Scouts up," he called. As they spurred ahead, he turned to Margaery, riding behind Mage. "Cold nips," he warned. She smiled, showing chattering teeth. "Cold nips, but summer kisses," she replied through numb lips. He laughed, feeling warmth bloom despite the wind. That night, campfires dotted a hillside within sight of the ruins of Harrenhal's outer watchtowers far off, mocking teeth silhouetted against gray heavens. Sparks spiraled upward. Snow licked them dead mid-air. Robb paced perimeter until boots froze stiff, then slipped into the healer's pavilion to visit Olivar. The boy, still pallid, reclined on a litter reading by tallow lamp, a dog-eared copy of The Seven Strangers, given by Margaery. He tried to rise. Robb pressed him down gently. "Rest earns you more honor than foolishness," the king said. Olivar murmured, "Thanks," fumbled ring from string round neck, a dull bronze band, scribed with twin towers. "My lord grandsire will crawl through dung pits to reclaim this," he whispered. Robb closed Olivar's fingers around it. "Take it to Winterfell instead. Let its story end there." Beyond the healers, a small weirwood sapling had taken root beside the camp's animal pen. Transplanted by crannogmen traveling with the host. They wound shields of rushes round its slender trunk, lit a lantern nearby, so icicles melted and refroze, painting the branches crystal. Robb stood beneath it, touched red leaf edges. Snowflakes piled in his beard. He scarcely felt them. Out of the gloom, a figure approached. Cybele Westerling, hood deep. She carried a bundle of parchments and vials. "For your maesters," she said, proffering. "Herbs to dull lung fever. Charts of southern storehouses the Lannisters abandoned in haste. Use them." He accepted with curt nod. "Your daughter will be safe in White Harbor," he assured. Cybele's eyes shimmered. "Safety changes colors in war. Guard your queen." She departed before he could reply. When at last the neck spread marshy before them, the world smelled of rot beneath snow, a stink like fat gone rancid. They slogged along elevated dikes where mud sucked at horseshoe nails. Northern scouts greeted them. Causeways reinforced, reed mats frozen solid. 2 Crannog outriders bowed to Margaery, presenting her a single blue winter iris. "Bloom of our bog, my queen." She accepted, slipping it into cloak clasp. Underfoot ice cracked like distant whips. Wolves howled in vast emptiness to the west. At dusk, they sighted Moat Cailin. Black ramparts half buried under centuries of peat. Towers jagged as dragon fangs. Smoke spiraled from within, ironborn still. Robb called halt, convened captains in a ring of tallow torches spitting angry sparks in sleet. "We cannot siege," May growled. "The bog drinks our rams." Robb knelt, scooped handful of peat. "We smoke them," he said, squeezing water until mud dripped. "Reeds burn slow, thick." He instructed Crannog scouts to weave mats of dry reed bundles, soak ends with oil, stack against breach gaps, and set night fires. Meanwhile, a detachment under Lady Mage would circle through chessboard of pools and approach the weakest tower door where iron hinges rusted. All night the fires smoked, choking windward embrasures. Come dawn, Ironborn drummed war drum rhythm across ramparts, yet coughed between beats. Black plumes swirled from arrow slits. Meg struck at second bell. Axes splintered worm-gnawed beams. Bears roared their war cry. By midday, a ragged line of Ironborn staggered out, palms up. Among them, their captain, Dagmar Cleftjaw, beard rimed with soot. He spat at Robb's boots. Gray wind snapped within a hair of his wrist. "You burn peat as crones burn seaweed," Dagmar rasped. "Northmen learn coward tricks from frog-eaters." Robb answered with quiet steel. "Call it cowardice if you wish. The sea's suns drown when ice forms." The captain laughed then, a wild, broken sound. Ice forms for all. He knelt grudgingly. With Moat Cailin retaken, the road into the north lay clear. White ravens arrived from the citadel, wings ghost pale against lowering skies. Each bore small scroll repeating single statement, "Winter has come." Margaery watched one raven drink from a bowl of melted snow in her tent. It tipped head back, feathers puffing. She shivered though the brazier blazed. Word of winter raced south swifter than armies. In King's Landing, Cersei wrapped a fur-lined cloak round Tommen and demanded Jaime quicken pace. At Harrenhal, Tywin stared into a brazier, fingers steepled, calculating supply lines that would freeze. And on Dragonstone, fiery beacons lit by Melisandre spelled omen, seen also in frozen pools. Shadows in snow. Erlor's queen closed eyes, whispered, "Downwind." Scar. Back north, Robb pushed toward Torrhen's Square, intending to break before final trek to Winterfell. But scouts returned with tidings. Winter storms swallowed the castle 3 days earlier, and its wells froze. Sir Helmund Tallhart, holding the square, begged grain. Robb detached wagons. He, Margaery, and a hand-picked contingent of 1,200 marched on. The last leg was a crucible. Snow deepened past knees. Drifts swallowed trail markers. Frozen fog hovered over White Knife River like breath of some indifferent god. Fires refused to take without mountain pine. Men huddled 3 to a blanket when night fell to Nash 40 degrees below. Yet hearts remained tethered to hope. They spoke of Winterfell's steaming glass gardens, now dull, but waiting. They sang fragments of Reach harvest songs when winds lulled. Northmen countered with dirges of ice that curved unexpectedly into lullabies. Margaery's voice, hoarse, nonetheless carried through the clang of armor as she walked among them, repeating, "2 steps more for summer, 1 more for spring," until rhythm took. On the 19th evening, sentinel horns sounded. Winterfell's watchfires winked on the horizon, smudges of gold behind swirling white. Robb's breath caught. He took Margaery's gloved hand. "Home," he whispered. She squeezed back, though her lips trembled from cold and from realization that the brooding fortress, pocked by war, burned, rebuilt, was to be hers too. Closer, devastation revealed itself. The outer walls remained scorched, re-stoned but blackened, yet high as cranes new timbers rose on scaffolds. The great gate stood half-hung. Chains crusted with rime, but banners flew. Direwolf, gray on white, beside the 4-petal rose. Beneath, a knot of figures awaited. Sir Roderick Castle's son, now Castellan. Old Hodor towering. Maester Luwin's apprentice. Handful of survivors of Pharaoh Greywater watch. Robb dismounted, boots crunching. The yard fell silent, winter wind thrumming in place of trumpet fanfare. He knelt on cold stone, pressed bare palm to ground. "I am Robb Stark," he said. "I have come home." Silence snapped, replaced by cheers ragged but fierce. Margaery slipped next to him, bowing head, snowflakes nesting in hair. She spoke. "And I am Margaery, of House Tyrell and Stark now by vow. I bring grain for bellies and seed for fields when thaw returns." Her words carried clear, echoes bouncing off broken towers. Women wept softly. A child raised twig as if soared. Gray wind trotted ahead, sniffed the cracked courtyard, let out howl that ricocheted through cavernous spires. Somewhere deep inside, a single wolf answered faintly. Ghost of memory or survivor, none could tell. That night they feasted in the great hall beneath patches of missing roof tarps. Fire pits blazed, warmth battling draft. Grain stew flavored with what scant herbs remained. Boiled turnips, thin slices of goat. Nothing like Reach feasts, yet spirits soared. Robb stood at high table, Margaery beside him, and lifted stone cup carved with running wolves. "This hall sees hunger," he proclaimed, "but not hopelessness. Our union blooms even in frost. As wolves hunt in packs, as roses send roots deep, so shall we withstand winter." He drained cup, those below echoed. After feast Margaery wandered alone through Godswood, snow crunching. The heart tree loomed ancient. boughs crusted with hoarfrost. Red leaves fluttering heartbeats of color against white hush. She approached, inhaling resin scent, candle lantern swinging from hand. She knelt and whispered fears. Of lions still prowling, of dead men marching, of failing as queen to a realm that had not birthed her. Wind whispered back through branches like careful counsel. She rose, pressed palm to bark, felt cold bite but did not flinch. Robb watched from edge of wood, unseen. When she turned, he stepped forth. The old gods heard. She smiled, blinking tears. He said, "They asked for offering." She looked alarmed. He produced the blue iris the Crannogmen had gifted. "For them," he said. She placed the brittle, preserved bloom in a crook between roots, petals almost glowing in dusklight. Snow deepened overnight. Dawn found Winterfell wrapped in hush. Yet new noise soon clattered. Ravens bearing sealed scrolls, one from Jon beyond the wall. Craster's keep reclaimed, mutineers gone, but wildling host sighted moving on the Frostfang trails. Another from Garland. Tywin withdrew to Casterly Rock for winter, leaving Harrenhal to Jaime. And one more, smallest, stamped with rose and bee sigil of House Beesbury. Old Town has crowned a Tyrell High Steward. The Faith voices blessing. Margaery handed Robb each in turn. Hope and peril interwove with every wax seal. In the battlement's Maester's turret, Robb assembled war council. Maeg, Garland via Raven, Roderick Castle's heir, 2 Karstark captains, Margaery Tye. Map weighed with stone chess pieces. He traced finger along the King's Road northward. Mance Raider marches. If he breaches the wall before our grain convoys reach the Night's Watch, we fight 2 wars at once. Margaery suggested sending fast riders west to White Harbor to ferry supply by Sea of Ice Shield, then haul across tundra, quicker than broken roads. Roderick's heir agreed. But can the watch hold? Maeg asked grim. Robb met her gaze. We ride to Castle Black ourselves, before Snow Swallows passes. Margaery neither blanched nor argued. Instead she asked what herbal tinctures best treat frostbite, instructing Maester to gather. Plans made, they descended. In corridor outside, Robb stopped his queen, pressed brow to hers. "I'd drag you deeper into teeth of winter every day." She smiled, breath misting between them. A rose blooms best when challenged by chill. "I will not wither." He kissed her then, a promise and plea fused, as snow whirled outside broken window like blessing and warning at once. In Casterly Rock, Tywin read the reports of Frey betrayal undone, Bolton bastard slain, and Stark returned to Winterfell. He folded parchment, eyes narrowing. Winter impeded action, yet spring would come, and with it reckoning. He commanded scribes to draft new offers, to reshape alliances amid frost. "War is a game of seasons," he murmured, "and I may lose a round, but not the contest." Far away, waves of the sunset sea crashed relentless, indifferent, as ravens already winged north carrying letters of gold-stitched intent, each envelope heavy with promises colder than the snows swallowing Westeros. Night settled again over Winterfell, but this night, the hall's shattered roof could not silence the talk of possibility. Outside, barns groaned under weight of ice, yet within, the forge glowed ember red where reached smiths, guided by Northmen, melted Ramsay's knife into nails for repairing children's boots. The mingled clang of hammer and laughter drifted skyward through holes in slate, past chimneys coughing sparks into star-last air. And above all, unseen but felt, the darkness beyond the wall. Stirred, but in Winterfell's courtyard, 2 new banners mingled in the wind. Wolf and Rose, roots entwined beneath white silence, defying the night to tear them apart.